was among that group. So I'll finish with there's a couple of light anecdotes to this, if you can believe it. That dust cloud goes past. Before we had left the lobby, we had FBI people telling us that there are more planes, right? We saw 2 planes. There are going to be more planes. They didn't have a count on how many more planes there were. So as I was coming out of the dust, what became clear to me, I happened to be standing now in front of the mayor's building, City Hall. And I thought to myself, that looks like a target. I'm not going to go there. So I made an about face and ended up walking back through the cloud, deciding to be on the other side of the Trade Center. Meanwhile, all this dust is coming down and my eyes are getting clogged. And most of that crowd had already gone by. I'm going back into it. And then I realized I had to do something. So I'm going down the street. Imagine this is 10 o'clock in the morning, 10:30 in the morning, on a bright sunny day, but it's pitch black. I'm almost feeling along the walls until I look in a window and there is a green shamrock, neon shamrock, and across the shamrock it says Budweiser. It's a pub. Open the door and I walked in and I thought I walked into Cheers. I'm not sure if you've seen the old TV show Cheers. I just walked, this incredible disaster is out here, and I open the door, and all these clean people are watching TV, and some of them with beers, and there's a lady behind the bar that wants to help me out, and it's just staggering what that could do. Anyway, two fellows came up to me and said, "You need help." Got me in, cleaned me all up. And then the rest of the day began. So this could go on for a long time. If you have questions, this is supposed to be a Q&A. Any questions about the day, what I did, or what anyone did, or anything about it? I'm game. Yes?
Did you communication with your family?
I'm sorry?
Did you communication with your family? Did they know that you were okay?
Oh,
Were they panicking? Like, what was, how was everybody?
I come from a large family. I got 3 brothers and 3 sisters. I had a brother-in-law. Next to the complex is the Trade Center, is the Financial Center. My brother-in-law had worked in the Trade Center, and after the bombing in '93, his group got up and moved to the Financial Center for whatever reason. My brother Keith worked about a half a block from the Trade Center and was there then, and his wife worked in the same area. My other brother-in-law worked at the Pentagon. So, yes, we did know, while I was in the lobby before the collapses, we knew that the Pentagon got hit. So by the time, okay, we'll flash forward from that moment in Cheers, I got busy for the rest of the day. And then I was told by my higher-ups, we're going to be here for a long time. Go home, be back here at 6 in the morning. I was driving basically like a cop car kind of thing. And most of the other people I work with, the cars got crushed. I happened to have one of the cars that did get crushed, so I had to take people home. And I was telling the story earlier, somebody was calling me, one of the guys that I had worked with in this emergency management had just retired, and he'd been calling me all day. And he lived by me in Brooklyn, so I stopped by there. And that's when I said hello to he and his wife, and they got a big screen TV, and all they're doing is watching a film over and over again of the planes, of the people jumping out of the windows, and I just said, "That's enough, thank you," and went on. It wasn't until I got home that, we're so used to the cell phones now. I had a cell phone, the early version of the cell phone, that didn't have voicemail. What we had then was little recorders at home, and I could see the light on my recording system that had calls on it. So it was my sister, it was my brother, others. My son was home at the time. Others, quite a few others. So I knew immediately, that Greg, my cousin in Pentagon, brother-in-law, he was all right. And my brother and his wife who got away from the Trade Center pretty quickly. So the rest of them were good, and they found out I was all right. The woman I was seeing at the time, who is now my wife, she was working north of the city, and she was commuting to Iona College, and heard all of this. I think she must have called ahead or something. Anyway, she made a U-turn to get back into the city, back into Brooklyn. And she was trying to get in touch with me, obviously. And I ended up later that night, we hadn't moved in together yet. I went over to her apartment, and her neighbor was inviting everybody in. It must have been 10 or 12 people that I didn't really know. And somebody handed me a cell phone and said, does anybody want to call? The one call I've been trying to make all day was back to the firehouse I had last worked in, this hazardous materials company, because I knew they were there. I saw them responding to this thing. And finally I got through. Finally there was somebody picking up the phone. They had been busy all the other times. And the guy, normally in a firehouse, you pick up the phone and you announce who you are. This is Agent Company 22, Firefighter Smith, can I help you? All right, so it's Firefighter Castagna, can I help you? It immediately came to mind, Firefighter Castagna retired about a year ago. Now he's in the firehouse answering the phone. Something changed. So, I'll finish with this because it gets a little tough after this. All I did, I asked him how many. That's all I had to say. And we had 11 names, including Jack Fanning, who was mentioned earlier today. He was our chief. And then things went on from there. We were busy most of the night. Then went back to the site the next day, and the next day, and the next day, and the next day. Questions? Yes? I like the New York t-shirt. Go ahead.
When did you realize that it was a terrorist attack?
I can't hear you.
Sorry, when did you realize that it was a terrorist attack?
Realize. You know, in your generation, terrorist comes to mind, that word comes to mind immediately. In that era, we had a bombing, and I guess somebody called them terrorists at the time. It wasn't an immediate part of your vocabulary. You knew, attack might have been. All right, this wasn't an accident. After the second plane came in, all right. And I told you, as I was walking out, I knew there were more planes, and we could still be under attack. So yes, sometime during that period, I realized, yeah, people called terrorists were attacking. Yes?
Could you, like, at any time when you walked out of the building, could you hear, like, bodies dropping or no?
Okay. I told you the windows were broken. You could hear everything outside. One of the things you could hear was thumps outside. And as I was describing in that command center, we're trying to get elevators and sending people here and we're kind of busy. You hear the thumps outside. One of the people I was working with was not from the fire department, but he worked in emergency management. And one of the bodies didn't hit the pavement, it hit the, like a carport, the lobby. If you came to the lobby off West Street, there was a canopy over it.
I know what you're talking about, yeah.
All right, which is all lightweight metal. And when this body hit, it just crashed. This was not a thump. This was everybody just turned around. You know, what's that? I had already figured out, and I can't say I remember figuring it out. I just assumed those thumps were jumpers. Right? And we went about our business. There's nothing I could do about it. And really didn't think along those lines at all until the crash. Until my fellow emergency manager goes, he just jumped up and he goes, "What's that?" You know. And I just turned around and said, "They're jumpers." And we're back to work. And to this day, hard to imagine being so casual about it. It was just part of work on a busy day. But I heard later, you know, people studied the video for days and days and days. And nobody knows how many people actually jumped, but they think roughly one person jumped every 30 seconds from 8:46 in the morning till the second collapse completed. So I forget how many that adds up to, but it's a lot of people.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Question? Anybody?
How do you go about compartmentalizing that? You're there, you're a firefighter, you've got a job to do, yet there's that humanity piece. You're still a person.
Yeah. Well, as I said, my way of thinking about it is, why didn't you have all these emotional things going like the jumpers, right? And I just report, listen, it's adrenaline. You just keep going until something actually stops you. The next point in time, the first time I am actually stopped emotionally. Later in the day, before I'm ordered off the scene, I run into a firefighter that I had worked with for a lot of years, a new Jack Fanning. And he came out of an office, so he's wearing his white shirt, and here we are on West Street. The place is full of dust. Everybody's full of dust. He's got a white shirt and tie on. And I go, Bob, how you doing? He goes, Jack is missing. That's Jack Fanning. We'd worked with Jack Fanning for like 15 years, Jack. It was the first time it struck you, somebody you knew. And for about 15 days into this thing, the word missing, it was always used as missing. There was none of that presumed dead, or the phrase was just missing. Right? And as somebody said before, there's 343, they never came back, but for a couple of days, that list was about 500. They couldn't keep track of everybody. Sadly, that day, something like 80 or 90 firefighters who were not on duty, who were just getting off duty. It's 8:46 in the morning. The tour ends at 9 o'clock. Many guys come into work early. They'll just say, oh, I'll take it. I'll take your spot and leave and take it. So they jumped on. My friend John Crishy, who had just been relieved of duty as a lieutenant in the hazmat company, decided, oh, I think I'll just take it in. And that was part of what got you, losing people like that. But figured out later, after they crunched the numbers back down to what later became 343, a lot of the missing were like our wounded, the other fellow that got hit. Guys New Jersey's right across the water. Their EMTs came over. So we were putting guys, I wasn't personally, guys getting put in New Jersey ambulances or on boats. Boats were coming in. And they would just pick them up and get them across the river. What does it look like from anywhere from the outside? It looks like all the lower Manhattan is burning. I mean, the black smoke is just keep coming out. By the way, the last fires weren't put out until December. This was a long operation. What else? What else? What else? What else? Another hand.
When did you ever feel angry in the days after the attack?
Yeah, angry at the missing, and some of the odd things. My friend Kevin Smith, who I'd worked with as a firefighter, is a hazmat person. He's the one that actually talked me into going to the emergency management office. Only about a month prior to that, he decided to go back to the hazmat team. All right, now I'm in the emergency office, and he ends up getting killed, and I don't. And I'm sure for every one of us that survived this thing, similar stories. Tom Fitzpatrick, who was like a deputy commissioner of some kind that I knew when he was a firefighter. And we ended up meeting every day for, I don't know. I didn't leave the site until I was working at the site and going home each night, but I didn't have a day off until 2 Sundays into this thing. That's when they put the list out, the 343. That became the official number. But after that, I was going to be removed from the site, okay? If there's other people who can do your job, let's get you back to normal. They set up another, oh, by the way, 7 World Trade collapsed later that day. So we had no place to work. They put us in on a pier in Upper Manhattan. But anyway, I was told that I would have a day off. I'd have 2 days off. I was going to have November 10th, November 11th off, which is Veterans Day, and it was a Sunday. And it was going to be celebrated on the 12th, and I was going to have a Sunday and a Monday off, and I'd go to work in our new place up the river. On December 12th, an airline took a nosedive into Queens, not too far from where I'm living in Brooklyn. I'm off. I'll get a day off. I get a day off, and I'm hearing on the radio, there's a plane crash. Where is it? It's in Rockaway, which is part of Queens. Rockaway. I opened my window. I could see this thing. So I called up and I said, listen, I'm the closest one in the office to get to this thing. I took in that affair. And another cheers moment in one sense. You know, everything is somber. I get to this, you got a plane crash. Plane crash in a residential area. This is not a good thing, right? So you get that. You find out pretty quickly, it's a very small zone of operation. This thing nosedived straight down, right? So this stuff wasn't spread all over the place. And there's firefighters coming in from all directions. It was probably the most low-key response to an emergency I ever saw. Every one of these guys have been working for some time at the Trade Center. It didn't matter where you worked in the city. If you worked in the Bronx, for the first month and a half, you were going to get shifted down to the Trade Center. They were digging for bodies forever. So doing a plane crash was nothing. This was a piece of cake. You just said, wow, nonchalant airline crash, unbelievable. November 12th. I almost forgot what the question was. That okay? Anything else? Yeah.
How big was the vicinity around the World Trade Center that was affected?
First, Giuliani closed the entire city down. He closed all the bridges. You couldn't get in, couldn't get out. I got another lightweight story for you. By the next day, they had closed down everything from 14th Street down, which is a good, about a fifth of Manhattan is closed. But the actual burning part, most of the buildings on the perimeter of the site, every building in the Trade Center, 7 buildings, 1 collapsed, 2 collapsed, 3 was the hotel. One of the buildings, one of the towers collapsed and severed that building in half. 4, 5, and 6, they were all burning. Buildings perimeter to that, there were 2 or 3 fires around. In fact, adjacent to 10 and 10, next to 10 and 10, the building that had a horrible fire, you got killed in a couple of years later. They had a piece of debris rip into that building. That thing was on fire. So, how wide is the debris? Think of, as far as fire operations and rescue operations
Please
are
excuse
concerned.
this interruption. Teachers, please check your email for a new link to use to access today's event. Again, teachers, check your email for a new link. Thank you.
Remind me when you asked that question. I'm pretty sure I might have been one of the first people to actually walk around the entire site just to see what that perimeter was. But roughly, every building that was facing the Trade Center, with 1 or 2 exceptions on Church Street, had some problem. Pieces of the buildings were shot into the perimeter buildings. In fact, a friend of mine was at a golf tournament. He was a firefighter in Brooklyn. He was at a golf tournament that day in Staten Island, and they get word that this thing had happened. They all jumped on the ferry to get over to Manhattan in their shorts and their golf shirts, and they ended up reporting in. We had a very slipshod kind of command post after that. They report in, and somebody said, they turned around and said, well, behind us, that we were on one of the streets, West Street runs right on the west side of the Trade Center, separating you from the financial center and a whole bunch of residential buildings, high-rise residential. Well, apparently, something flew into one of the residential buildings. These are occupied, people. There's fire up on the 12th to 13th floor. So my friend, the golfer, and his buddies took lines, ran in there, and they actually put the fire out on the 12th floor. Yeah, perimeter, think of at least a full city block outside of the Trade Center.
I agree with you to lunch. Thank you so much.
Oh, some gotta go. Thank you.
Thank you.
And the quiet ones are over here. Oh, we got one in the back.
Is there anything that you would have done differently?
That I would have done differently?
Yeah.
Wow. I think I described my job. What would I have done? Did I learn anything on the way that I could have done differently? I'm not sure. I don't think so. I didn't think of too many alternatives. I was pretty serious about the work I was doing. Most of the people, I probably interacted with close to 100 people that day. And all of them were as focused as I was. All right, it wasn't, and I don't remember particular mistakes being made. The mistake being made is who's the structural engineer? That's another story. Most people stayed focused. In the afternoon, oh, by the way, after the second collapse, the second tower collapse, I have very little time frames. I don't know what hour I did this or what hour I did that. But at one point, I'm walking along West Street. I helped put together a command post for my friend Pete Hayden to keep running the operation. You might have seen the pictures. Pete's standing on top of squad, somebody's truck. I helped put that together. But in that area, walking along West Street, there's nothing but rubble. And there's a firefighter, Rescue 3 firefighter, one of the senior firefighters. Some guys stay in a fire department for 40 or 50 years. The rescue companies, they are the hot shots in New York. All right, they do a lot of the big heavy-duty emergency and rescue work. But he was getting up in time, and they asked him to, rather than run with the rescue company, to take, they had these utility trucks, what are they, TAC units or something?
TAC
they're
units,
called?
yeah.
TAC units. So you imagine a small box truck full of emergency equipment, heavy-duty emergency equipment. It's only used at these super-duper things, right? So he obviously drove in with this thing. But I see him, and he was one of the first people I saw who was sitting down. He's sitting down at the curb. His name was Mike, and I can't remember his last name. And I'd only met him once before. And he stopped me. He called my name, Kevin. Kevin, how are you doing? Or just acknowledged me, and I acknowledged him. And he's sitting there, and I look around, there's nobody around him, and I asked him, how you doing? And he says, like I said, he's a senior fellow, he's been around a while. He says, I've been to 2 wars. I've been to 2 wars, I'm not doing any more. So he was one of the few that I met. I'm sure there were others who just said, that's enough, enough is enough. All right? Many people worked, I was there for 2 months. There were people that worked through April trying to dig out of that mess. But Mike wasn't gonna work another day. So it affects people differently, depends on what their back life was. New people. Questions? History. Oh, here we go. We got 2.
I have another question. So, like, when this was all happening, did you guys just, like, go towards your chief, or did you kind of just, like, do your own thing? You know what I mean? Like, did you, like, kind of, like, follow what your chief was saying, or did you kind of just, like, all try to
Well,
do everything?
fire departments, almost everywhere, are pretty rigid organizations, all right? In general, I'll talk in general, because I'm not that familiar with a lot of volunteer operations. I shouldn't say that. Last week, I was teaching at the National Fire Academy and met people from all over the country. Almost everywhere, if you call a fire company, you get an officer and 1, 2, 3, or 4 firefighters riding on a truck to get there. And they work as a unit, all right? Freelancing is not allowed at all. And when it's done, occasionally freelancing, you know, somebody rescues somebody that's hanging out of a window and okay, it was not according to protocol, but okay, that's all right. But most of the time, freelancing don't happen in the fire department. So
We
I'm
follow
sure,
what we call SOPs, the standard operating procedures. Everybody's given a job at the beginning of the tour, the officer is in command. Whatever he says ultimately is what we're gonna do that day. If he says, Morabito, grab that lady hanging out of the window, even though it's not standard operating procedure, that's what I'm gonna do, because I'm following orders, direct orders. Semi-military type of, an idea of when we go through the fire department. But on any given day, when an alarm comes in, a certain amount of vehicles, men are dispatched to that situation, whatever it may be, a car accident, a fire, an emergency. And this situation happened to have the biggest amount of alarms in the city of New York, which meant almost every single fire company from around the city was coming in. At the same time that they're doing this and responding to what they know, they're still following their standard operating procedures. At no point did guys say, let's not do what they told us and let's go around this way and we'll be heroes. Everybody was on the same page, so we were all working together. When, excuse my French, the shit hit the fan, it was let's do what we need to do to save as many people as possible, including ourselves, and get out of this situation alive. There were people raining out of the skies. I mean, there were people crushed and broken on the floor. We were stepping on bodies. This was not a normal standard operating procedure. We went in that way. The day changed as it went on. And the captain can tell you, the emotion that you feel is locked away until later. You can see how upset he is about talking about certain things. He's holding back. He's holding back because he relives that day in his mind over and over again, especially when he talks about it. He doesn't want to get upset about it because he's a man of stature. He's my captain. I have to look up to him. If he breaks down, I break down. So he's holding it together for you guys. But I know what he feels.
we actually have a connection. Your ladder 10 and engine 10 are in one fire station immediately across the street from where the South Tower was. On Saturday, this whole happened on a Tuesday. On Saturday, I was ordered by the chief of department at the time to take over that firehouse. Now, I told you I was working in emergency management. I didn't actually wear any of this stuff. I had a baseball cap that said OEM on it. I had, by Saturday, I did wear my blue shirt. But I had a jacket on that said Mayor's Office of Emergency Management. And I knew Gene Kelty, the captain of the engine there. So I saw Gene, and I told him that the chief just basically ordered me to take over this firehouse. Firehouses and it's just not done. The guys in the firehouse own that firehouse. Meanwhile, this order was taken on Friday, late in the afternoon. By that time, the missing members of Ladder 10 were known to be missing. Their wives were showing up at the firehouse. Friends were showing up at the firehouse. This became like a wake. That's all I can say. The center of any fire station is the kitchen, all right? Big table. On normal circumstances, it's the fire company sitting around having dinner or lunch. Sometimes there'll be special occasions, other people are coming to the house. That kitchen was full. So when I was told I had to take over the firehouse, I said, oh, all right, I'm glad Gene was there. I said, Gene, here's what I got. And there was no pushback whatsoever. And he says, do you want to talk to the men? I said, hold on a second. I don't know anybody in that firehouse except Gene. So I said, I got to get something that looks like fire department, right? The place is covered, remarkably, this is right across the street from the South Tower in the rubble. The house, I think, had a broken, there was a railing up on top. That was the only thing broken in the whole place, except the doors were open and the place was covered in dust. So Gene invites me to talk to the company. wait a minute. What I wanted was something like this. But what I found a ball cap, FDNY, Dombrowski. When you get to my age, you start forgetting names. Every once in a while they pop in. When I came on the fire department 20 years before all this happened, the most serious thing, we lost a battalion chief in the 44th Battalion. I was in the 44th Battalion at the time. They had a building collapse. The fire chief had gone in the building to tell everybody to get out of the building because he thought it might collapse, and it did collapse. He got killed, but 3 other guys got caught, and it took a while to get them out. Dombrowski, who's a firefighter like I was at the time, basically, we thought his arm, I was told the next day he lost his arm. They spent a year putting his arm back together, and he actually came back to the fire department. He got promoted to lieutenant, he got promoted to captain. I hadn't seen him in a long time. Anyway, one of those moments, pick up the hat. He's got his name written out, Dombrowski. Anyway, I put the hat on, told Gene, I can do this. And we talked to them. They were very helpful. No, there was no pushback whatsoever. And in fact, I had to have this thing set up as the incident command post by Monday at 9 o'clock. So I worked through Saturday and through Sunday and had this thing put together. Took over the top floor. Computers came in, people came in. And a lot of people volunteered to work. There was all kinds of people showing up at the site that weren't actually firefighters. There were people from Rhode Island came there. I met people from Ireland that showed up at this place. Anything you want to do, you ask them, you need something done. Home Depot had delivered an entire lumber yard right next to 10 and 10. And we needed to build long benches and bookcases and whatever. And anyway, half of the company rolled up their sleeves and got out of the kitchen just to get working. It felt better to work than to sit there and deal with all of this. Newbies, any questions? Piece of history. Oh, another one, I'm sorry.
How would you describe the way you felt after the shock and adrenaline sort of like settled?
Well, it mostly hit when I got home. Well, I heard, okay, Jack Fanning is missing. That was the first shot. The second shot was making a phone call back to the hazmat company and find out we lost 11 people, including Jack. The last person I talked to in the firehouse, one of the guys I worked with, I don't know how long we're on the phone, he goes, when are you gonna get here? Now, I just worked 12 hours at the site. I made a roundabout to take people home to my car. And I basically been asked to come back to the firehouse. It's gotta be, I don't know, 10, 11 o'clock at night at that time. So we get back to the firehouse, nearly everybody that wasn't working is in the firehouse, 20 or 30 guys, including retirees were coming in. Actually, the guy that asked me, when are you getting in? He had retired 2 years prior. Right? People were just coming back home, if you would. So that's part of it, you know, one by one as you get these emotional hits. Something I did, can't remember. I had to leave the firehouse sooner or later. I had to be back at the site at 6 o'clock in the morning. But we were doing tasks, we were assigning people. The guys had been digging all day. Their eyes are everybody's eyes are absolutely bloodshot. They're filthy dirty. So we're running around the neighborhood. Drugstores were still open. We're getting all kinds of materials for eyes and whatever else we could do for people over there. And they're going to stay the night at the firehouse. Yeah, but it comes in waves. Like the next day, here I am working. The next day, another bright sunny day, but this smoke is just still popping up. I'm going to flash back to the day of. If you were on one side of the site, you know, for you who live out in rural areas, you gotta get to Manhattan someday to see what this is all about. The site, each building was 1 acre, each of the towers is a 1 acre footprint. The whole thing must have been 30 or 40 acres.
Each floor was an acre.
Yeah.
So 110 stories, 110 acres,
Yeah.
spread out over a large area, but going straight up.
Yeah, and it all, both buildings had 6 levels of basement levels. There's a B1, B2, B3, B4. So all that stuff ends up submerged in there. More stories about that. That's down there for 2 months. You find engineering stories that go on and on and on about how the building was built. But getting back to that emotional bit, getting back to the site the next day, it's still burning. There's a little bit more organization going on. They still maintain just 1 command post on one side of the site. I'm working with the same chief, Pete Hayden, today, I worked with the day before. And it was all about, okay, how many people can we send in? Everybody's trying to find a crevasse to go dive into and maybe dig somebody out of this thing. I hadn't thought about it until later. Had I thought about it, somehow my brain came to the conclusion, you're not gonna get anybody out of this thing, all right? But clearly, other people did. And I'm working with the people in charge. And we're gonna presume we're gonna get somebody out of here. Until, actually, there's a fellow by the name of John Norman that I'd worked with at Hazmat and some of the rescue companies. He became the chief of rescue services. He came up with the fact that in Mexico City in 1986, they had an earthquake. And they dug somebody out of that 15 days later. Some girl was rescued 15 days after the whole thing came. So 15 days became the marker. So after 15 days, as I said before, that word missing went away. It's not missing anymore. They've been lost. All right, and the adrenaline others had, I didn't have the adrenaline then. I call them diggers. The diggers wanted to get somebody, and they weren't going to stop. Yeah.
So, what are some of the effects that you still feel today?
Wow. You feel today, well, when I mention names that I'm personally related with, you know, people I work with, it comes to me. Jack Fatty, Kevin Smith. There's about 60 names that I had worked with at one time or another on that plaque. And if you have little anecdotal stories about them, you remember them and suddenly get a little choked up about it. One thing I hope to do this year is the 20th anniversary. It's amazing 20 years have passed. My friend, who I mentioned, Kevin Smith, his daughter actually joined the fire department. She's on the fire department today. Each year on September 11th, there's a service done at the Trade Center site in which they announce the names of all 2,900 and whatever, one by one. And people are invited to read those names, usually people that have some relation to that person. So each one reads about 10 or 20 names. And I'm going to see Josephine, and there's usually a cop or fire in full uniform on either side of the speaker. So I hope to get to be one of those.
When we met for breakfast, you told the story about Father Judd. You know, I wasn't in the room. That, the other thing I think kind of stuck out, when you mentioned the cop car. Just to reiterate that story. As anybody who does a cop car, you got a whole.
Oh, my car. Oh, that story, okay. What I had was when they created this Office of Emergency Management, we ended up getting a bunch of unmarked cop cars. So a standard Chevy, and you'd have a little red light you could throw on the top, that kind of thing. It had sirens in it. So I know you don't know the geography that well of Manhattan, but of New York, but the Trade Center's at the lower end of Manhattan. Cross the bridge, you're in Brooklyn. Cross another bridge, you're in Staten Island. That's where I had to chop off Joe Felino. Then I had to come back to Brooklyn. So, oh, that's right. Early in the day, when I did the loop around, I walk around, I see my car parked outside of 7 World Trade. It's covered in debris. It's just a mess. And in fact, the back window is taken out. Now it's all just shards. And you know, I get more to do than play with cars. But let me see. I just put the key in, and I was shocked. It actually started. So I said, well, maybe I'll move it away from here. And I moved it, 6 blocks up, parked the car, and went back to work. Later on, as we're leaving the scene, a group of us that had been there since early in the morning, Joe had a car that he didn't move that's now not a car anymore. He needed a ride home. So we're leaving the scene. I'm going to go up over the Brooklyn Bridge. But I'm not up over the bridge. I'm just starting to go over the bridge, and there's the young couple waving me down. They want to ride to Brooklyn. Okay, jump in the back. But the back seat is nothing but dust and glass. And they don't care. They just want to get out of town, get out of here. And they actually told me where they want to go in Brooklyn. I don't remember. And for the first time, I'm actually picking up speed. I'm going over the bridge. There's absolutely no traffic at all. And I look in the rear view, and I could just see that the vacuum that's created by the car moving in one direction is sucking all this dust out the back window through the faces of this couple. So we finally come down off the bridge, and I said, where'd you want to go again? And they both opened the doors and sprung out. They wanted no part of this car anymore. So wherever they were going, they're going to get some other place. Then I realized it was probably dangerous to actually drive this car until I get some covering over the back window. I went to the closest firehouse. Besides 10 and 10, this is the first house I'm going to be in. These guys, there's no fire apparatus there. Why? Because they went to the trade center. And there's one firefighter there, big tall guy, a senior firefighter. I said, listen, can you help me out? I just need some duct tape or something I got to put over this back window. I don't think he said a word. He went in, found the duct tape. I stood by with Joe, did this whole thing. Quiet as the guy never said a word. I didn't know at the time, but I could see there were cars arriving. It was wives of guys that were missing. So I quietly got out of there. I drove over to Verrazano Bridge to drop Joe off. Oh, by the way, remember Giuliani closed down all the bridges. I got to put my siren on. Over there, getting to Staten Island. Fortunately, Joe lived very close to that bridge. And go through the neighborhood, and everybody's out. Everybody is out in the neighborhood, and they're all applauding. Anybody who was coming over the bridge would get applauded. And then I brought Joe home, and he's got his wife standing there and his daughter standing there. They're both crying. The daughter had just started, this is September, right? Classes started that week at the city college. They call it? Anyway, there's a college about 3 blocks from the World Trade Center site, and she had an apartment somewhere nearby and was at school that day. Well, she got out of town and got back, and mom and daughter hugged and were waiting for dad to come home. So it was a nice little homecoming. So then at least that night I got to get back to Brooklyn, back over the bridge. There's nobody on the road at all. This is New York City. This just doesn't happen. I'm up on Verrazano, and I realize I'm going about 110 miles an hour. All right? This adrenaline, I guess, is still working. But the brain actually kicked in and said, no, you don't need to be doing 110 miles an hour. And I slowed down, come down off the bridge. I'm on what's called the Bill Parkway that's going to swing around, get me to my neighborhood. And there's nobody there either. And the adrenaline overcame my thought process, and the next thing I know, I'm up 100 miles an hour again. Slow down, and I look in the rear view, or the side view. I don't have a rear view, and there's a car following me. And that seems odd, but anyway, I get off at my exit. I'm going to go see Joe and his wife, who have been calling me all day. And his car followed me into the neighborhood. I park in front of Joe's place. This is a different Joe. And the car stops behind me. I get out and I go, okay, what's this about? It was a woman in the car, and she goes, are you all right? She just knew something was not normal, and she was going to follow me wherever. And I said, I think I'm okay now. I guess that's probably the first time I actually realized what you were talking about. When did you first find out that something, your brain wasn't the way it was? and then we happily departed. It was good. Good part of the day. Other stories? I don't know. Questions? Crazy day. This thing went on for me, went on for 2 months. I was supposed, the week before September 11th, I'd been working at the emergency management for close to 4 years. I was getting a little tired of it. And Jack Fanning, who we spoke of earlier, he's the chief of the hazmat. And we had a little interview Thursday before the Tuesday. And basically I was asked to take command of the hazardous materials company. I said, all right, let me think about it. And on Monday, the day before Tuesday, I called that office and said I'd be happy to accept. And that was supposed to take place January 1st or something. No, we lost Jack. We went into a morass. I didn't get back to the hazmat company until about April, which was another whole story. How are we doing? Piece of history. You know, as I said to the ones that were here earlier, when I was in your shoes way back when, most of the adults that I knew could tell you where they were and what they were doing on December 7th, 1941, when Pearl Harbor was attacked. That was the memorable date of the time. What we're talking about now is one of those memorable dates. Without a doubt, sometime in your lifetime, there's going to be yet another memorable date. In my lifetime, it was that and the Kennedy assassination. And that just sort of pops out. Everybody knows exactly where they were and what they were doing the day they heard that President Kennedy was shot. So I guess what I'm trying to say is the reason you're here, whether you chose to do this on your own or this is part of your class, history is actually made up of real live human beings. When you're reading your history books, what are you covering in history these days? What period? Columbus or? World War II? Yeah. So as you're reading through that, you get names like MacArthur and Patton and all these things, and they're names. They're names on a page. Maybe you got to see some video of them, possibly. All right. But I know I'm a vast reader of history. All right. But they're just pages, and it's not. You don't really get to know the guts of the people that actually lived through that. With one exception, and I recommend this to anybody that reads history. Go find the autobiographies of the events. All right. Sometimes the autobiographies are not written quite as well as the big history pieces, but you're actually talking to, or somebody's talking to you that was actually there. All right. So that's a little bit. That's a parallel I can draw with what's going on today. Yeah.
When you think about, like, we're coming up on like the 20th year anniversary of when this all happened, when you look at it, do you think of it as a really long time, not a really long time ago, but do you think of it as like a long time ago or
No.
like a very short time?
So that comes with age anyway. You're going to do this. Things, for you guys, you know, last year was last year, and 2 years ago was 2 years ago. Well, as you advance in age, those years go by real fast, all right? Including these last 20 years, whether or not something like this happened. But when you talk about the incident, the memories are incredibly clear. All right, when I talk, the few things that I just mentioned, the memory is as clear as it was the day after. It just stays with you. But it seems like it happened yesterday. Yeah. Don't be shy. I'm surprised I'm doing this at all today.
I could speak to them for a little while, Cap,
I'm
give them a
sorry.
break. No, it's all right, you got some food here if you'd like to. I'm just gonna basically tell them, don't forget your phone over there too. I understand you guys have seen the video. I did several documentaries. My name is John Morabito. I was a firefighter at Ladder Company 10 on September 11th. And I had been part of a rotation program that they started earlier in the fire department. We were the first class coming out of the academy. We were supposed to do a year in what they called an A, B, and a C fire company. A being our busiest, C being our slowest. I had done a year in Brooklyn in a very I guess moderately busy. It was my B company. And then I went to ladder company 10 in Manhattan, and that was supposed to be my C company. So I was on the rotation over there. I did my year over there, went back to my original firehouse, and then I transferred into Manhattan. I liked it. I liked being part of Manhattan, the city. I was a young man 20 years ago. I was 35 years old, so it was a great experience for me. But I'll just talk briefly on what happened to me on the morning of September 11th, which some of you already know the story. I had come in early that day, around 8 o'clock, to relieve the guy that was working the night before. He was the chauffeur, and I was supposed to be the chauffeur, the engineer driving ladder company 10 that day. I let him go a little bit early. I sat down to breakfast at the table. We were having some pancakes. All the guys were sitting down, like the captain said. The kitchen is the center of the firehouse, so we're all hanging out there. And we were looking forward to playing softball the next day. We had made it to the softball playoffs for the first year. So we were all gung-ho. I had my softball equipment in the car. I was all psyched. I was going to work a 24-hour shift, and then I was going to go play softball. A great day at the firehouse. Beautiful, 83 degrees, sunny, beautiful day, September 11th. We're eating pancakes, and we hear an explosion. Boom. Nobody even got up from the table. We all just kind of looked around at each other. It's a little unusual, but, you know, we're in Lower Manhattan. We hear some loud noises. With that, a firefighter who had the front door open, he was hanging outside having a cigarette. He comes running to the kitchen. He says, "An effing airplane just hit the Trade Center." Out of our seats, run to the front door. In the back of the firehouse, it's all windows. It's a beautiful, sunny, clear day. Front of the firehouse, it's pitch black outside. It's nighttime. What is going on? So there are a couple of people huddled in the front of the firehouse. They're up against the door, and they're looking up at the Trade Center. And I'm kind of, sticking my head out like this, and I look up, and it's just all smoke. And the entire top of the tower is on fire. And the smoke is blowing up towards the firehouse and making it pitch black outside. We grab the people from the front. We throw them into the firehouse. Get in, it's not safe. And then we hear glass falling to the ground. And there are papers coming down. And then I see on the floor what looks to me like insulation. I see insulation from the building falling on the floor. I get my gear on. I grab my probie, Sean Talon. He only had 11 months on the job. Sean was a Marine, and he was an EMT, and he became a firefighter. So he was new to the job. We called them probies. They wore an orange patch on their helmet. I said, "Sean, stay close to me." I said, "We're going to see some bad stuff today." I said, "But we're going to make it home tonight." We got on the rig. When I drove the rig out onto the apparatus floor into the street, I realized what I thought was insulation was flesh. It was people's bodies that had gotten blown out from the Trade Center. I immediately stopped the truck and I looked at my officer. I said, "These are people." I could feel the tires sliding on their flesh. And he said to me, "We can't help them, let's help those." I proceeded to make a left. The engine company 10 followed me. I went up Liberty Street. When we got to the corner of West Street, I had to make a right. There was a Lincoln Town Car, which they use as car service in New York. At that time, like taxi cabs. And there was a woman who was up on the curb. She had the car door open, and she was sitting with her feet out of the car. And now everybody's yelling, "Come on, let's go, we gotta go." I got sirens blaring, I'm hitting the horn, I'm yelling at this lady, and she's looking at me, she's completely in shock. I don't know if something hit her car was disabled, but she was not moving. A police officer runs over, he pulls her out, he jumps in the car, and I see he's trying to get it in gear, and it's not moving. My officer tells me, "Ram it, ram the car." I hit the car, the officer jumps out, thankfully he's not hurt. The car goes up on the sidewalk, and we make the turn onto West Street, going towards One World Trade Center, the first building that was hit. As I'm flying down the block towards the Trade Center, a man comes walking out on the sidewalk and into the street, and he's completely engulfed in flames. He's on fire. His skin is dripping like wax to the floor. Ultimately, because I jumped out of the rig to tend to that man, he saved my life. I grabbed another firefighter, Terry Rivera. I said, "Get the can." It was a water can. We have to put this guy out. A security guard comes running out of the building with a jacket, knocks the man to the floor, and he starts putting out the flames. We sprayed him with the extinguisher, and we put a fire blanket on him. Immediately, ambulances are coming in. First ambulance on the scene is a Jewish volunteer ambulance service called the Hatzola. I tell them, get this guy, he's the first victim, let's get him to the hospital. They take him, he survived. 85% of his body was burned, but he lived. His sister came to the firehouse to thank us for saving his life. Because he was on fire, I did not follow my guys into the building. I tended to him. By the time I got away from him and went into the building, my guys were on the 19th floor. I couldn't catch up to them. I walked through the vestibule, and right on the floor next to me, there was a woman who was still alive but completely burned. Burned so badly that the bones were sticking out of the tips of her fingers. Her tongue had swelled up, her hair was singed, her clothes were gone, and she sat on the floor trying to speak. I picked her up, I said, this is the fire department, we're gonna get you out of here. And she died. And I laid her down, I put my jacket over her. Next to her was another man pushed up against the wall. His glasses were opaque with smoke. He also had no clothes on. He was already gone. His tongue was hanging out of his mouth, touching the floor. The reality that this was some type of a fire in the lobby that was not there when we walked in. It was, how are these people burnt? There was no fire when we walked in. We later found out that the jet fuel came down the elevator shaft, was on fire, hit the mezzanine level, shot out a big explosion, and in an instant the fire was out because there was nothing to burn. It was glass, concrete, the fire sprinklers had come on, but the people that were standing in the lobby were immediately incinerated by this ball of fire, including the gentleman that was out in the street and these people that were burned. So now we go into the building. I'm the chauffeur. There's not too many companies on the scene now. It's just myself, Ladder 1, Chief Firefighter's coming in. My job was to go to the command station. The World Trade Center is a big building. Radios aren't going to work from the lobby to the 77th floor. So they have a repeater system in there, and my job was to go to the command station. I met up with the fire safety director from the World Trade Center, who happened to be a retired captain, Jimmy Corrigan, from Ladder Company 10. He sees my helmet. Hey, I was in Ladder 10. Let's work together. So now I'm part of this. I'm a fireman. There's Mayor Giuliani. There's Thomas Von Essen. And they're coming to me. What do we do? What do we do? I'm like, I don't know what the hell are we supposed to do. I'm working the command center. Okay, Chief Pfeiffer, you take over. Chief comes in. He relieves me. I am relieved now that I am no longer calling the shots on who's going up there. Chief Pfeiffer actually sent his own brother to his death as a firefighter, not as a brother. Chief Pfeiffer ordered his brother up to one of the floors to do a search. Ultimately, his brother passed away. I did not want that responsibility. Like the captain said earlier, would you have done anything differently? In hindsight, maybe knowing I would have tried to get people out of there faster. When I was in the building, there were engineers, like I said, Giuliani, Von Essen, a lot of gold stars, big chiefs walking around. They said these buildings are never coming down. It's going to take 10 airplanes to take these buildings down. I'm pretty confident we got time to do this. Like the captain said, everybody above the fire, I don't think it really stands a chance. The fire is going up. Those people are trapped. The stairwells are knocked out. The plane took out a good portion of the building. We're not going to save those people, but let's save the people that we can. While I'm in the lobby and I'm running around doing my job, trying to help people, escorting people out, sending them out, the people start jumping from the upper floors. And they're hitting people we're letting out the door. So these people now have survived the fire and the explosion, and they went outside and boom, somebody landed on them, and they were killed. And when they were hit, they disintegrated. Their bodies were crumpled and destroyed. There was nothing left of them that we could even pick up and try to resuscitate. They were gone. So we decided, myself included, to send people down through the subways so they wouldn't be hit by debris and by people jumping. We said if they go down the subways, it was the 4 and 5 train line, they can actually walk from here about 4 blocks away and come up. They'd be out of the danger zone. So it was myself, a couple of police officers, and 2 guys from Fire Patrol that were setting up this evacuation line. While we're in there walking around, I hear over a police officer's radio. My radio was silent. Prepare for impact. A second plane is approaching. I looked up at another guy, another fireman. I said, holy shit, we're under attack. He goes, no shit. I go, why do I not know this? Why do you know this and I don't know this? And people like Captain here, they knew that this was a terrorist attack. I thought we had an airplane accident. I thought this was, okay, let's go see how many people we could say. Now, we're under attack. The plane hits, the lights go out, the building shakes, but we're still here. Lights come back on, emergency lighting comes back on. We're still here. We're still operating. People are still coming down the stairs. In the lobby, between the trade centers, there was a concourse where they had a lot of stores. And I remember going in there, and there was a Starbucks coffee, and people were still online buying coffee. And the guys are still working behind the counter. Everybody get out of here right now. Oh, what's going on? So the plane just hit the building. A second plane just hit. We're under attack. These people are waiting to get their coffee. The surrealism of what the day was like and what was going through everybody's mind is so different. Now they take off. The two guys jump over the counter. They take off. We're getting everybody out of the concourse area, getting everybody out down through the subway system. We collapsed the revolving doors because people are going through the door, and it takes forever to get all these people, 15,000 people to go. So the doors collapse. They make two tunnels. The doors stay in the middle. We get the people now. They're coming through. It's going a lot smoother. Things are quieting down a little bit. There's not as many people jumping. You don't hear as much glass breaking. A little side story. As the people are coming down, the sprinklers had been on from the fire. A lot of women were working. They were wearing high-heel shoes. It's difficult to run in high-heel shoes, so they took their shoes off. The floor was covered in glass and water from the sprinkler. It's slippery. They are ripping their feet to shreds. There's blood everywhere. The blood is mixing in with the water, and there is blood swirling all around the floor. So when you came down and the first thing you see are bodies and blood, panic is setting in, and people want to get out of there as quickly as possible. I was so proud of the people of New York that worked in that building. Instead of running, they were helping each other. Could you imagine knowing that your life is on the line? The building's on fire, there's blood everywhere, there's bodies everywhere. I want to save myself. They helped each other. I purposely grabbed two guys, and I said, that woman over there is having difficulty. I said, get under her arm and get her out of here. Yes, officer. They grabbed her, and I watched them. They carried her down into the subway. There was a gentleman who was blind, and he had a seeing eye dog. And whatever normal routine for him was to leave when he left at the end of the day, he couldn't go that way. It was blocked. It was different. He didn't know an alternative way to get out of there. And I could see he's panicking. I told two other guys, get that guy. I go, that guy's in trouble. Yes, sir, we got it. And they grabbed him, and they carried him out of the trade center. And I watched, and these people they were following instructions, even though it was this, what I call organized chaos. I found out later on by watching a documentary that that gentleman, the blind gentleman, was on the upper floors, and he was in the stairwell with his dog. And on the way down, he realized they weren't going to make it. He knew that it was moving too slow. He said, we're going to die. He let the dog go. He said, you go. You can make it. The dog went down 3 flights and went back up to get him. The dog knew that he couldn't leave without his master. And he went back, and those people lived, and that dog lived, and they made it out. And that was the efforts of the FDNY and the police department, because now we knew that we were under attack, and we had to get people out of here as quickly as possible. I wish we had more time. I wish that we can give a big giant finger to the people that did this, that we saved everybody, that everybody walked out of there. We collapsed the doors. People are going through. People coming down the escalator, and now it's getting kind of quiet. There's not as many people coming down. We're starting to talk a little bit more. There's about 40 firemen around me. We're assembling. We're trying to figure out what should we do? Where should we go? How are we going to get up there? What kind of material do we need? We need hoses, we need apparatus, we got to get up there, we got to help these people. There's not as many people coming down anymore. All of a sudden, the building lets go. The lights go out, and I hear, The building's coming down. There's a woman that goes through the door. She tries to turn back to me. She's hit with a beam. She's gone. I get down on the floor. I get picked up like a piece of paper, and I'm flying through the air. The pressure of the building coming down picked me up and threw me through the air. Now I'm in complete darkness. I can't breathe because of the dust. I got thrown through the air, and I just watched this poor woman get crushed by something in the building. I am pleading with God for my life. Pleading. God, please, God, whatever I have to do, I'll do it. Please. 11 seconds later, I'm alive. I'm in complete darkness. I can't breathe. I'm on the floor. I go, oh my God, I can't believe this. I'm alive. I thought it was a bomb. I thought it was a bomb that came in on a subway and it blew us up, and that's why I went up in the air and I was flying. I had no idea the building had just come down. I get up, I can't breathe. I have my oxygen pack on my back. I have my cylinder that gets some air. I turn it on. I go to put the mask on my face. It's filled with so much dust that I put my face into a pillow of dust. Now it's all in my eyes, up in my nose. I can't breathe. I shake it out. I put the mask on. I get a couple of hits of air. I start to calm down a little bit. I can breathe again. Now I have this mask on. It's pitch black. It's full of dust. I can't really see. There's debris everywhere. I have a little flashlight on my helmet, and I start walking. I can only see about as far as whatever the flashlight could reflect off of. Now I want to get out of here. I don't know where I am. So I make my way to where the guards were when they first walked in, the security guards, and I could see that the guard stations are completely collapsed and there's bodies pushed into there. I can't go that way. I work myself to the elevator bank, and the elevators come crashing down, and there are dead bodies on the floor who are inside the elevators trying to get out. I can't make it out that way. I go around the elevator bank, and I see a big gray patch that's lighter than everything else. And I said to myself, that's a window. That's a way out. Turns out there was an escalator right there, and the escalator held the debris from the building that was falling, and everything stayed underneath that escalator. It was clear and open. It was a way out. I made myself, my way over to the window, and before I stepped out, I took off my flashlight and I shined it into the darkness. All I see is darkness. I just see smoke and darkness. As if anybody could see my light, this is a way out. Come and find me. With that, 5 people come out of the window. An officer from engine 5 and 4 civilians. And he grabs me, he goes, who are you with? Who are you with? They go, ladder 10. I go, we got to go. We got to get out of here. We need to move. Myself, him, and 2 of the people ran to the left. The other 2 people ran to the right. We got out into the street. The other building was coming down. The people that ran to the right were killed. Myself, the officer, and the other 2 people ran to the left. We were out in the street. We survived. So it was just a split decision of which way to run. That meant life or death for those people. I was out in the street. I see the building coming down. I have to outrun this building. How am I going to do this? I got 100 pounds of gear on my back. This thing is going to fall like a tree. I got to run from here 7 blocks away in seconds. I started running. There was a field where they were going to build another building surrounded by a chain link fence. I opened the fence and I went inside and I just laid down in the grass, and I figured that this was it. This was the end. I was going to get hit and I was going to be crushed. The building goes down. I see the dust coming. It completely engulfs me. I'm still alive. At that point, I thought it was the end of the world. I said, the bombs are coming. This is, nuclear war. This is what a nuclear winter looks like. Ash in the air. Everybody's covered. Everybody's going to die now. This is it. This is the end. I'd kind of given up on humanity at that point. With that, I start to see figures running in the gray. I'm like, oh my God, thank God I'm not the last person alive. Thank God that there's still humanity existing out there. I go outside. I start working my way north along the river. And I come across my guys that I was working with. I'm shocked that they're alive and they're out here. Now we're gathering information. Who's missing? Who's not missing? Where was this guy? Where did you see him? What floor did you guys make it to? One of my guys is on the railing, and he's going to jump in the water. I'm like, don't jump in the water. Like, we're away now. Don't do it. I got to get out of here. I got to get home. Like the captain said, there were ferries and ambulances and everything. They were crashing into the edge of the pier to try to get people were jumping onto the ferries. This was craziness, chaos. So finally we get the information. I make a phone call on, at that time, just flip phones. There was no smartphones. I try to call my girlfriend at the time. The signal wouldn't go through. I tried to call my mom. I knew she'd be watching, try to give me some information. Signal wouldn't go through. I called my aunt, who has an analog phone, one of the earliest phones. They've had it since 1939. It's still connected by a hard wire. The phone call goes through. It picks it up. She answers the phone. Oh my God, are you okay? Now I'm getting information from home because I didn't see what was happening on the television. I was living it. I don't know what happened. A plane, a second plane, now I'm getting all the pieces of information. My mom gets on, she's hysterical. I'm glad you're alive. She goes, but your brother is down there. For whatever reason, the two of us happened to be working on the same day, 2 different firehouses, 2 different locations. He was in Brooklyn, I was in Manhattan, but he's down there. I immediately hang up the phone and say, I gotta go. I gotta go find Michael. He's my younger brother. I love him very much. I cannot go home, survive, and leave his body there. I have to find him, dead or alive. I start working my way back to the building. My guys are trying to grab me. What are you doing? You're done. What are you doing? I said, I got to go back. I got to get my brother. You can't go back. You're going to get killed. The other buildings are on fire. They're going to come. I said, I got to go back. I got to find them. I find the bicycle laying in the debris on the street. I picked up the bicycle. Now I'm riding a bike. I must have looked like a lunatic. I'm a fireman in full gear, completely covered in dust. I'm bleeding, and I'm on a bicycle going into the trade center. What the hell is this guy doing? Is he crazy? I got as far as I could with the bicycle. I dropped it. I went in. Now I'm looking for my brother. And I'm asking every fireman coming out, did you see engine 228? That was his company. Did you see engine 228? No, we didn't see him. Engine 228? No. I get on my radio, ladder 10 to engine 228. Anybody in engine 228, please respond. Nobody's responding. So in my mind, my brother's gone. His whole company is gone. I'm trying to put it out of my mind. As I get closer to the trade center, I see an ambulance on fire. I'm thinking maybe there's somebody in the back of that ambulance that was getting ready to be transported. I look in the ambulance, there's nobody there. I took a hose laying on the floor, a little bit of water coming out of the hose, I put out the fire. I walk a little further and I see my captain who's off duty. We had a lieutenant working that day, but my captain had gotten off duty the night before and he was in the area. So I see him and he grabs me now. He sees I'm disheveled. He said, come with me, come with me. We'll find your brother, don't worry about it. They got a command station over here. They got a list of names with everybody that's missing. We'll go find your brother, come on. He's trying to make it lighthearted. We go over there and we look at this list of names of firefighters that are missing. They don't know where they are. And my brother's name is on that list. I'm destroyed. I'm destroyed. Don't worry about it, we're gonna find him, he's okay. Cap gives me a pat on the back. We turn around and we see another captain standing there and he's holding 5 pairs of the guy's black shoes. I gotta find my guys. They gotta get their shoes. They need their shoes. How are they gonna go home? They don't have shoes. All of his guys were dead. He was holding on to the one thing that they left behind that he can grab. He was in shock. I said, I'm not gonna do that. I gotta keep my head clear. We worked our way back to my firehouse, which is now on the other side of all this debris. So I had to go all the way around. I had to go down several blocks, work my way around, and come around the back of the firehouse. I go into the firehouse and I see all the guys sitting there. How are you alive? Morabito, how are you alive? My name is on a chalkboard. I was the chauffeur that day, so when they came in, they looked at who was on the chalkboard and they said, okay, you know, Pancini's dead, Olson's dead, Morabito's dead. These are all the guys working that day. And they assumed we were the first ones in there, right across the street, that we're all dead. So I walk in the door, they're like, oh my God, dead man walking. You know, are you a ghost? What's going on? I try to explain to them, you know, what I knew, who I knew was missing, what information I had, you know, so-and-so went to the hospital, and this guy survived, and this guy, I saw him by the water, and they're okay. Now we're starting to put together a bigger picture. As we're sitting in the kitchen, we had a refrigerator on this wall, and when the trade center had come down, like the captain said, we left our doors open to escape and let people run through there. That refrigerator swung around the kitchen and went out the window on the other side. That was from the force of the wind coming through the firehouse across the street from the Trade Center. That was the same wind that picked me up and threw me through the air like a piece of paper. So our refrigerator's out the window. All of our windows are blown out on the kitchen side of the firehouse. And we're sitting there talking, and all of a sudden people are now running through the street. Get out, get out. The other buildings are coming down, get out. Now we're jumping out the windows. Who's crawling? Some guy broke his leg. He's trying to get away. The building's still standing. We go back to the firehouse. Guys go back up on the pile. They're starting to dig through the pile. They blast the horn. Another building's coming down. Everybody get out, get out. We dive out the window. But a third time, we're like, that's it. If it comes down, we're giving up. If it comes down, we're getting crushed. We're not doing this anymore. Back and forth, jumping out the windows, breaking ribs, breaking legs. I told the guys, I said, I'm going to go back out there. I'm going to see if I can dig. I got to find my brother. All right, go do what you got to do. I go outside. I'm digging on the pile. We're handing buckets. Everybody's handing buckets. We're digging. Everybody stop. Listen. We're listening for somebody's voice. Keep digging, keep digging. All right, everybody stop. I think I hear a cell phone. Somebody calling somebody who's under the pile that's never going to answer that phone. They're in there. We can't get to them. They're covered in tons and tons of steel, and we're doing it with our hands and little garden shovels. Dogs walking around on the pile trying to smell for people. It's excruciatingly difficult. It's very hot. It was, at that time, probably about 85 degrees, and I am dying. I got to get something to drink, and I see a hydrant with a little bit of water trickling out of it. Most of the water lines were severed when the Trade Center had collapsed. It ruptured all of the water system underneath the ground, so we couldn't get water. The only way we were putting out fires, we were getting water from the boats. Boats were pumping water up onto the land through hoses to put out the fire. I go over to that hydrant, and I get down on my knee, and I'm drinking, and I go like this, and my brother walks right in front of me. Michael, I jump up and I grab him. The relief that I felt that he was alive, and him and I are grabbing each other. He says, I thought you were dead. I said, I thought you were dead. He said, we had come through the tunnel, and I saw the dust coming at us, and I turned to my coworker, and I said, my brother's gone. He goes, I'm going to concentrate on what we have to do today, but I know my brother's gone. So the both of us were looking for each other at the same time that we're doing our job, trying to rescue somebody else, so somebody else can have someone come through the front door. That night, I told them, I said, let's stick together. Let's stick together the rest of the day. We're going to stay. We feel safe now. We have some closure to our story. Let's bring some closure to some other people. So we started working, trying to dig people out, trying to help people. My brother winds up making one of the only rescues on the Trade Center, the gentleman they called the World Trade Center Surfer. He was on the 30th floor in a stairwell. His name was Pasquale. And the building came down. He blacked out. When he woke up, he was holding on to a railing, and he was sitting on an 18 by 18 inch piece of concrete in the 7th floor stairwell. He was on the 30th. He blacked out. The building collapsed. He rode the debris down unconscious. And when he woke up, he said, I could feel the sunshine on my face. I was in a hallway in a stairwell. My brother was directly involved with members of Rescue Company 5 in rescuing that man. They had to go above him, lower a rope to him to tie around his waist so they could lower him down because they couldn't get to his position. Later on that day, made my way back to the firehouse again, and like the cap's car, my car was parked in front of the Trade Center. It was flat. My car was crushed. The headlights were on. My softball gear was in the back seat. I wanted to play softball the next day. Reached in, I grabbed my glove. Car's gone. Back to the firehouse. Try to figure out what's going on. The day goes on. We're gathering information into the night. It's dark outside. People are still digging. I'm exhausted. I'm exhausted. I got to go home. I got to go see my loved ones. I got to go see what I'm fighting for, what life is all about. So now I have no car. I walk from my firehouse to the Brooklyn Bridge. I'm going to walk over the Brooklyn Bridge into Brooklyn, and then I'll get a ride on the Brooklyn side. I'll go to my family's home. I lived in Long Island at the time. My family lived in Brooklyn. I can get to my family's home, and then, I'll see my girlfriend later on, figure that out. So as I'm walking over the bridge is shut down. Giuliani had shut down the bridges and the tunnels. And halfway over the bridge, there's a construction worker little African-American guy wearing a green construction helmet, and he's leaning on the railing, and he's looking at Manhattan, he's looking at the buildings, and he sees me coming over, and I'm wearing my bunker gear, and I'm all covered in dust, and he starts talking to me, and now we start walking. He was in the middle of the bridge, and I'm talking to the guy, and he's telling me, oh yeah, I was in Brooklyn, and I saw the whole thing. He goes, but you don't understand. He goes, there's a bigger purpose to what this happened today. He goes, I know you see this as death and destruction. He goes, but God works in very mysterious ways, and there's a reason for this, and there's a purpose. And I don't even want to talk to anybody at this point. I'm just agreeing with him. Yes, yeah, oh, you're right, maybe you're right. And I walk over the entire length of the rest of the Brooklyn Bridge with him, and coming down on the other end, there are 2 police cars that are blocking the entrance to the bridge, and there's a little pathway to the right for bicycles, because people used to be able to ride their bicycle over the Brooklyn Bridge. We get down to the other side, I'm maybe 100 yards from the police car, and the gentleman says goodbye to me. He goes down the bicycle path. He says, I wish you luck, and he goes down the bicycle path. I walk up to the police officers. I listen, I'm going to need a ride to my parents' house. Yeah, don't worry, you want a bottle of water? I said, yeah, I'll take a bottle of water. I said, you know what? I said, give me another bottle. I'll go give it to my friend. They go, who? I go, the guy I was walking with. They go, who? I said, the little guy, the construction worker. Well, you were alone. We were watching you. We thought you were going to commit suicide. We saw you standing on the bridge looking over the railing, and we thought you were going to jump. We were sending units to come and get you. I go, no, I was talking to somebody. I go, you were alone. With that, I kept my mouth shut because I thought I lost my mind. That was a prophet who walked with me. I don't know if you guys believe in God, if you have a strong faith. There's only one reason why I survived that Trade Center collapse. I was with 40 guys, and they all died. I said, God told me, not today. This is not your time. He put his hands around me, the building collapsed, and I survived. I had to sit with a scientist by the name of Stephen Pellegrino, who wrote books about Mount Vesuvius and about the bombs in Nagasaki and Hiroshima, and that there were people at the epicenter of the atomic bomb that lived. There were 2 fishermen when the bomb went off in Hiroshima. And they lived, and nobody understood why. And he said the energy from the atomic bomb was deflected away from them because they were at the epicenter. The energy deflected away from them, and they survived. He goes, that's what happened to you in the Trade Center. I said, no, that's not what happened to me. I said, those other 40 guys would still be alive if the energy was deflected. I said, God had a different purpose for me that day. And when I walked with that prophet, it solidified my faith. I went down to the police officers. A car pulled up. I got in the car. They drove me to my parents' house. I got off on the corner. I started walking down the block. Now it was about 12 o'clock at night. This was the block I grew up on, my old block, friends and family. Everybody was outside on their stoop when they heard we were coming home, myself and my brother. Round of applause for us. The emotion that I felt, the sense of relief that I was someplace safe. It was a very devastating situation. Now, none of you were born when this happened. None of you have the sense of what the faculty, the teachers, what Chris felt that day. We were a nation solidified. We were all behind one another. He, as a fireman, couldn't wait to get himself in a vehicle and get down to New York City to help. This was coming from all over the world. This was a heinous act committed by 19 guys in 4 airplanes. They destroyed freedom. There was one night when I was at the firehouse, about maybe 1 o'clock in the morning, a dozen firefighters from Japan showed up. They had just gotten off a plane at JFK with little axes and just flew in from Japan, came down to the site and wanted to help. They didn't speak a word of English. I grabbed the chief. I was like, Chief, these guys just flew in from Japan. Like, we got to give them something to do. We can't send them home. The world wants to help. We are united in this. And he put them to work. It was probably the single biggest day of seeing the absolute worst in people and the absolute best in people at the same time, where people were helping one another and coming together to support one another. They were dancing in the streets, and I think they realized that they had awoken a sleeping giant. The war is still going on. How many hundreds of thousands of people are dying because of this one act? Firefighters, to this day, are still dying from cancer. respiratory illnesses, illnesses that are all related to the World Trade Center. This is still occurring, and you guys are now part of history. Imagine if you would, if you were sitting there when World War II broke out. You're living it. You're a living part of history. You get to experience what we're talking about. That memorial that Chris and the other firefighters built, that monument with the names on it, I knew those guys. I see a name and I know that guy, Lieutenant Atlas. He was an avid runner, had an autistic daughter. He fought very, very hard to get her a great education. On a fireman's salary, he put her through private school so that she can have a future. Jeffrey Olson was a prankster. He loved his family and he loved going fishing. Sean Talon, like I had said earlier, he was a Marine, he was an EMT, he played the accordion, he used to play it at parties. It was hysterical. Those names, to me, have personality. They're people that I knew. So when you read that, you look, maybe look one of those guys up, see if you can find out some information about them, see if you could put a personality to the name. Anybody has any questions, anything else you'd like me to talk about, I'd be happy to answer.
Well, they got moving on to their next class. I'm gonna go get my class, bring them in there.
Oh, we'll start over
We're
again?
gonna start all over again.
That's pretty tough to do.
Guys, the pictures that I gave you, just leave on the table, I'll gather them up later. I would appreciate it.
There's a lot of questions, but.
I'm
Where
sure.
in Brooklyn? Brooklyn Heights, that's the first question I have to ask.
Dyke Heights.
Dyker Heights, all right. I was in Flatlands.
Oh, okay. Back then, when it was a nice working class community.
Oh, yeah, Brooklyn changes, every generation changes. My grandparents moved to Brooklyn in 1950.
I got the camera.
Thank you.
Oh,
Right, right. You would think this was over with right now time. You guys could appreciate it more than them. They weren't even, but I think we're getting through to them. And you guys are doing a good job.
history is made by real people, as we were trying to say before, it's not just books, not just names.
Yes. Do you mind if I take pictures of you? Someday, do you mind if I take pictures?
I know.
I take
Oh,
pictures.
sure, sure.
Someday I will tell my son, my kids. You know, I'm sorry, I don't know how.
You're welcome. Thank you. I appreciate what you guys are doing here.
Sometimes.
You guys are curious about it, you know, and I hope that we're answering some of the questions of
Oh, no,
what you guys are learning.
No, definitely.
There was a lot of guys that came onto the fire department because of this. There were a lot of guys that went into the military to fight, you know, for what we believe is freedom. When, you know, someone had asked us if he was angry afterwards, I was angry because obviously we lost our friends. But I was thinking to myself, how bad is it for these people on the other side that they had to come in and act like this to get the attention that they're looking for the world to open up their eyes and to deal with their problems? They didn't do this just because they wanted to do it, because it was a fun thing to do. They did this because they believed they were doing the right thing. They believed that what they were doing was knocking down the United States and making themselves better. I mean, diplomacy, speaking about it is probably the best way to get things done. All you're gonna do by doing that is anger the world. Everybody in the world was pissed at them at that point.
I find it, a few stories, like all the other stories now.
And thousands of stories, exactly.
But being so close in time and place. Somebody had asked me earlier, because most people go home, you can make change in different things. I'm trying to change it. We walk out of
Your mind has a way of making it not real.
well, I had it when, very young, because they're talking about it, how long. His reaction was they're gonna go for the top floors are gonna fall. But let's get over, and what we're worried about, with the jumpers hitting back, right?
Change your status.
Escalator going down. The only open space we had.
It was on the other
ceremony to the 9/11 Museum. And one of the people that you as students generally make a connection with is John. Because his story is just so, I assume the word isn't really what I want to use, but painful. It's difficult. And we're re-asking these guys to relive and relive and relive, but in a lot of ways that's helpful. He saw ultimate evil unfold, but in that mix of devastation, tragedy, that there are heroics and there's goodness. And every year when I show the film, most people are in tears. And it's his story that really brings them to tears. And it's one that I'm really struck with, and I have difficulty with. You know, he said a moment ago that as a firefighter, every one of us wanted to jump in a truck and go. And that's the absolute truth. When the towers fell, first individual I called was John Allen, who no longer teaches here. I said, we're under attack. The other guy I talked to was Mike Shimmer, and he's no longer alive. Then I went into that room and made a phone call to the fire chief in Warren, because at that point I was president of the council. I said, you send them whatever they need. And we sent water, we sent some resources, and a few years later, I was at the Family Assistance Center, and a captain was talking. And he lost two sons, one a firefighter, one I believe was a police officer. Yeah. And a pancake. And all that death and destruction and horror and that sadness as I'm standing in the Family Assistance Center looking down at the hole in the ground. He's talking about how thankful he is for the dust, because he was able to breathe his two sons in and they're still alive inside of him. So this is a single instant moment that has forever, I think, shaped our lives, changed your lives. Earlier I said, look, we've lost some of our freedoms. When I was a kid, when Eric was a kid, even when Mr. Foreign was younger, hanging out in Central Falls, we could board a plane with our shoes on, our belts on, bottle of water in our hand, and a knife or a gun. You could bring it on board the plane.
Even earlier, a cigarette.
Right? So life instantly changed on that particular day. And this place froze. Almost for a constant week, we were transfixed to the television set to find out what was going on. Fast forward, we have that documentary, and it still is raw, it's still as powerful, it's still as real today as those events were 20 years ago. And this is an important year. This is the 20th anniversary, and we shouldn't forget, and we shouldn't grow complacent, particularly in the service that they did. We can't take our lives for granted. Every day that tone kicks off, I don't know if I'm coming home. My job as a captain is to make sure all those guys come home safely. But you never know. We got toned out the other night, 2 o'clock in the morning, nursing home. Most of these guys lay in bed and ignore it. There's 3 guys I know I can count on: Priviano, Bruley, Tyler Harris. I know they're going to show up. But most guys, whatever, it's another alarm. Stanley's going to go in, he's going to reset it. Well, that's not what happened this time. This time there was a fire in the wall. We wound up evacuating that entire nursing home. Not tragic, nobody was lost, but you never know. These guys got up, ate breakfast, wished their families well, and by the time we were done with first period, the world had changed. So listen to him, be respectful. He's got a story and things to share. And think about giving back to your community. Out here, Gloucester, Foster, they're volunteer companies. Eric Rotundo back there, he's a volunteer. Right?
100 times a day.
And if you really want to get involved, do it as a career. And you'll never look back.
with regret. So with that, John Morabito.
I guess I'm up first. You got some time to eat your lunch. Right off the bat, I'd just like to say, even though we are from New York City and, you know, it's a big city and there's a lot of people and a lot of fire duty, you know, you got to give a lot of credit to guys like Chris and volunteer fire departments. You might fool around in the firehouse, you break each other's chops a little bit, but when the bell goes off, when the tone goes off, you are a professional. People's lives are at stake. And these guys do it for free. They do it for volunteer. I mean, we're getting paid. They do it for free. So, you know, they show up at your house, you might think, oh, no, not these guys. They're stupid little, I burned popcorn in the microwave. What are they making such a big deal for? But they don't know. Every single time that tone goes off, they have to be professional. They have to be life rescuers. And that's what they do. On the morning of September 11th, we just told the story. I came in early that day because the firefighter working the night before wanted to be relieved. He had to take his kids to school. So I showed up a little bit early. I pulled up in front of the firehouse. I had my softball gear in the car. We were on a softball team. It was the first year we finally made it to the playoffs. I was excited. I'm looking forward to it. I got the playoffs. I got a good day at work here. It's a beautiful sunny day. It's going to be beautiful tomorrow. We got a great day to play ball. I'm going to do a 24-hour shift, go to play ball. It's a great 2 days for me. I go in the kitchen. I sit down. We're having pancakes. The front door is open. The guy's smoking a cigarette out the front door. I'm hanging out with the rest of the guys, center of the firehouse in the kitchen. And we hear an explosion. But it doesn't sound all that bad. It sounds like a truck going by with like a container. When the container bounces, it makes that kind of a hollowed echo throughout the city. And my officer, who wasn't from that area, he looks up at me and goes, is that normal, that sound? I said, yeah, it's probably just a truck going by or something. With that, a firefighter who had been smoking a cigarette by the front door came running into the kitchen. It's an effing airplane just hit the Trade Center. And he's completely as white as a ghost. Like, oh my God. Now we all jump up from the table. Everybody's up. We're going. Like he said, you never know when this is going to be the big one. You don't know. You know, no one tells you, be prepared, it's coming. Especially at that time. We weren't used to terrorist attacks. We go running to the front of the firehouse. In the back where the kitchen is, there's all sorts of windows. And it was a beautiful sunny day. It was bright. It was warm. The front of the firehouse was pitch black. It was darkness. It was nighttime. The smoke from the building where the plane had exploded was blocking out the sun completely. So I was like, all right, what is going on? I see people in the front of my firehouse cowering. They're bleeding. They're hiding by the door. They're on the floor. I'm grabbing them and I'm throwing them in the firehouse. Now I want to see what's going on. So I kind of just look up and I could see the entire top of the Trade Center is on fire. Smoke coming our direction. Then I hear stuff falling, glass, and I'm seeing papers falling all over the place. And then all of a sudden I see parts of the building, and I see insulation all over the street, and pieces of steel from the Trade Center, from the skin, broken windows. I go, all right. I grab my friend Sean Talon, who was a Proby firefighter. He had less than a year on. He had 11 months on the job. Sean was a Marine, and he was an EMT in New York City. Tough guy. You know, strong kid, young guy, he's 27 years old, got the world ahead of him. I told him, Sean, I go, you know, you're new to the fire department. Stay with me. We're going to see some bad shit today. We're going to get through this. We're going to go home. We jumped on the rig. I drive out onto the apparatus floor. When I get into the street, the insulation starts sliding under my tires. I realized that it was human flesh. It wasn't insulation. It was people that were blown to pieces from the explosion on the upper floors. And it was littering the street. It was all over the place. I immediately stopped and I looked at my office. I go, this is people. We're running over people. He goes, nothing we could do for them. He goes, let's go help the people in the building. I proceeded to make a left turn. I'm going down Liberty Street. It's only about a block and a half. Then I have to make a right onto West Street. As I go down Liberty Street, there's a black Lincoln Town Car, which was used a lot for car service. Have a seat? Yeah, feel free. There was a woman, had the car door open. The car was up on the curb. And she's sitting sideways with her legs out of the car. And to me, it looked like she was in shock. Now I got the guys behind me. I'm driving. They're all screaming, go, go, go. What are you doing? What are you doing? Let's go. Let's move. Lights and sirens are going. I'm honking the horn. And this lady's just looking at me. We know people are dying. We got to get in there. A police officer runs over. He pulls her out of the car. He jumps in. And I could see he's trying to get the thing into gear. But maybe the transmission's shot. Maybe he's got to step on the brake and he's not doing it. My officer tells me, ram it. Ram the car. Never done this before. We used to take off a mirror. You had to stop and fill out a police report. Smash the back of the car. The officer jumps out. The car goes up on the sidewalk, crashes on its side. I make a right turn onto West Street. Now I'm going as fast as I can to try to get over to One World Trade Center. Right in front of me is Two World Trade Center. As I make the turn, I go there. I'm about to go into the vestibule, and a man comes out of the building on fire. He's walking out into the street. He looks at me like this with his eyes black as night and his skin dripping like wax, hitting the pavement. He's completely on fire. I jump out of the rig. I grab Terry Rivera, another firefighter. Get an extinguisher. We got to put this guy out. I go around the front of the fire truck, and a security guard from the building's got a jacket, and he throws it around the man. He knocks him to the floor, and he starts putting out the flames. We run over to him with the extinguisher. We put him out. We had a burn blanket. We covered him in the burn blanket. At that point, an ambulance had pulled up from a volunteer ambulance service in New York, Jewish-run volunteer ambulance service. He was the first patient that we took out of the scene. He ultimately saved my life because I had to tend to him. I wasn't up on the upper floors where my company was, where my guys died. Because he came out of that building on fire and I tended to him, he saved me. He thinks I saved him, he saved me. He wound up living. He had 85% of his body was burned. His sister had come to the firehouse many years later to thank us when she had enough courage to come down to the Trade Center to see where all of this occurred. I go into the vestibule. There was a small area between the entrance of the Trade Center and then the main entrance. And in that vestibule, there was a woman pushed up against the wall. And she was sitting up, and she was so badly burned that the skin was gone from her fingertips and her bones were protruding through her fingertips. Her hair was gone, was burned. Her clothes were gone, she was nude. Her body was badly burned. Her tongue had swollen up so much from probably breathing in super hot gases that her lungs were burned, and she was trying to speak, and she was going, And I said, don't worry, this is the fire department, we got you, we got you. And she died, right there. There was another gentleman pushed up against the wall. He also was nude. His eyeglasses were opaque from smoke. His tongue had swelled so much that it reached out of his mouth and laid on the floor next to him. I couldn't even understand how these people were burned. There was no fire. We walked through the door. There was water on the floor. There was broken glass, but there was no fire. When the plane had hit the Trade Center, and in videos you could see this, the entire airplane disappears into the building before it explodes. It doesn't hit the building and explode on the outside. The plane was going so fast, 600 miles an hour, that the plane hits, goes into the building, and then the entire force of the explosion is inside the building. The plane was filled with thousands of gallons of jet fuel. That jet fuel had come down the elevator shafts and blew out on the mezzanine level, and was an instant fire and then went out. And everybody that was standing there waiting for an elevator was greeted with a massive fireball. And that's why these people were burned. When we got there was no fire. Everything in the lobby of the Trade Center was concrete and granite and steel and glass. There was nothing to burn. The people burned. Now, I get in touch with my company. Ladder company chauffeur, ladder 10 chauffeur to ladder 10. What's your location? We're on the 19th floor. You're never going to catch up to us. Stay in the lobby. Greet the new companies in. Go to the command center. Okay. I went to the fire safety patrol's desk. I happened to see the guy who's working there is a retired captain from ladder company 10, same company I'm in. His name was Jimmy Corrigan. He's working the fire command station. Jimmy, firefighter Morabito, I'm here to help you. Okay, good. Grab that microphone. Let's talk the guys through this. Now we're making the decisions as who's going where. He knows the building. I know the companies. Ladder 10, make your way up to the 35th floor. We got reports coming in that there are people trapped. We're getting all this information. I don't want this job. I'm a fireman. I'm not a captain. I'm not an officer. I'm certainly not the commissioner. And I'm sending guys now to potentially could what be their death by assigning them a position within the Trade Center. Very quickly afterward, Chief Pfeiffer shows up. I'm like, oh, thank God. Now we got a commanding officer that's in control. Chief Pfeiffer takes over the command station. He's assigning companies to go to different floors in the building. He assigns his own brother, Kevin Pfeiffer, to his death. His brother came in, he was a lieutenant, I believe he was engine 33. Hey, Joe, it's me, Kevin, where do you want me to go? All right, go up to the 16th floor. We're getting a bunch of phone calls. There's people trapped. His brother never came down. So Joe Pfeiffer sent his own brother to his death. And he lives with that. He lives with that as a firefighter and as a brother, as a family man, going home to see his sister-in-law. I saw your husband. We spoke. He's not coming home. The alarm goes off. There's a fire in the wall in the nursing home. Who's coming home that night? We don't know. The more guys you have there, the more chance everybody's coming home. The more you help out, the better a chance we're all going to get there. Guys start going up into the building, into the trade center. We're doing our job in the lobby. My officer says to me, do me a favor, go outside very calmly, because we think this is an accident at first. Do a perimeter search. Let me know what's on fire. So I go out into the concourse area where they used to hold little concerts and stage little amusement areas for people that are working during the day, food courts and farmers' bazaars. And I look up and Lou, the entire building's on fire on the upper floors. I mean, all around the building. Each floor is an acre, 200 feet by 200 feet, and every floor, what it looks like above 85 is on fire. All right. I look down at the ground and I see luggage. And now I see airline tickets blowing in the wind among all the dust and the insulation. And I see some woman's hair. And I just with my foot kicked it over, and it was this much of her face. She was on the plane, and her body just exploded. There was a gentleman's hand on the floor. His hand was pointing. It was up to the wrist with the bone sticking out. And the only reason why I knew it was a man's hand is because he was wearing a man's ring. His hand was gray and completely chopped up from broken glass in the explosion. It finally hit me that this was a commercial airline that crashed into the building. Up to that point, I thought it was a small plane. Plane hit the Trade Center. I'm not sitting and watching it on television. Everybody else is. I go back into the building. Now we're trying to evacuate people. I'm helping people out. We start sending people out through the main lobby, through the main mezzanine. People are jumping. People had now survived coming down the stairs, getting away from the smoke and the fire, to walk outside and to get hit by somebody that just jumped from the upper floors. Like, oh my God, we can't do this. One of the first guys killed on the job was a fireman because a woman had landed on him from the upper floors. He was immediately crushed, internal organs, everything imploded. He was gone in a second. All right, we can't send people out this way anymore. We have to send them down through the subway. Let's send the people through the subway. They can come up 4 blocks away, be out of harm's way. That's a great idea. Let's start doing that. People are coming down. We're sending them through the subway. People are coming out. All of a sudden, they hear on a police officer's radio, not on mine, prepare for impact. A second plane is approaching. And at that point, I looked up at a guy wearing a ladder 20 hat. I said, we're under attack. He goes, no shit, Sherlock. Why don't I know this? You guys know, but I don't know. Like, we shouldn't be here. We're under attack. He just assumed that we were under attack. Maybe he was a little smarter than I am. The cap will talk to you. He worked for the Office of Emergency Management. They had some understanding of terrorist attacks. I thought it was an accident. So now in my mind, I want to save as many people as possible, as fast as possible, because maybe there's 100 planes coming towards us. Maybe they're going to wipe out this city completely. We got to get these people, and we got to get the hell out of here. The second plane hits the building shakes, the lights go out, the lights come back on, we're still here. Everybody's still coming down the stairs, they're coming out the escalators, they're coming out of elevators. So now, let's get an evacuation going. We're no longer worried about putting out the fire. Let's get all these people out of here as far away as possible. I go downstairs into the concourse level. There are people online buying coffee. They're still standing there. There are 2 guys serving them Starbucks coffee. How you doing? What do you want? Latte? No problem. I go, get the fuck out of here. Building's on fire. What? It's time to go. Let's move, people. I can't believe they're standing there. I'm in shock. The people take off. The 2 guys jump over the counter. Oh, they run out of there. We got everybody out of that area. I go back upstairs. Now, people are coming down the stairs, and they're walking through the lobby. There are dead bodies in the lobby. We're trying to cover them. The ground in the lobby is granite, and it's covered with water from the sprinkler system. Women that worked in the building were wearing high heel shoes. It's impossible to run downstairs in high heel shoes and run on slippery granite floor, especially with broken glass. Bare feet, broken glass, not a good combination. Women are ripping their feet to shreds. They're walking through this glass, and the glass is an inch thick, and it's cutting their feet so badly that they're leaving blood clots all over the floor. So now, as they're coming down the stairs, it's panic. They realize they're in big trouble. The floor's covered in blood, there's bodies everywhere, the building's on fire, there's firemen and cops everywhere. They begin to panic. I was so proud of the people of New York that work in that building to keep a level head in this organized chaos, that they were listening to instructions given to them by the fire department and the police department. I remember clearly a heavy-set woman who was out of breath and was collapsing, and wanted to give up. I told two guys in suits, Wall Street guys, big shots, get that woman and get her out of here. Yes, officer. They got under her arm, and I watched them carry her down the subway. They got out of there alive. So proud of those guys. There was another gentleman. He was blind. He had a seeing eye dog with him. He was wandering around in a circle because his normal way of leaving the building every day was no longer available. He doesn't know what he has to do. He's blind. He's trying to listen. It's chaos. It's confusion. I took two other guys. I said, guys, I go to help that guy. He's blind. You got to get him out of here. Yes, sir, we got it. They get under his arm. The guy grabs the dog. Boom, down the subway they go. I find out later on by watching other documentaries that that man, that blind man, was up on the upper floors, somewhere around 53, 55. He came out in the hallway and what felt like an eternity to come down the stairs, very, very slowly, with everybody in the staircase. He's standing there with his dog, and he's holding onto the rail. He realizes to himself, we're not going to make it. We're going to die. He lets his dog go. Boomer, go, buddy, you can make it. The dog could run through all the people. The dog goes down 3 flights, turns around to go back and get his master. The dog couldn't live with himself, leaving his owner behind. They made it downstairs. They made a documentary. They survived. You never know what you're capable of until you're actually called to duty, until you have to do it. Every single firefighter that died that day, 343, that was more than 10% of the people killed on September 11th, didn't start their day off there. They all came there. They all came there to help these people. This is humanity. We all could have stood outside, waited for the building to come down. It would have been 343 firefighters that would have went home that night. But they didn't. They went in there. We did what we had to do. It begins to get quiet. Not as many people coming down the stairs anymore. People coming over to me, oh, thank you, officer, God bless you. I'm like, come on, please, guys, move, move. We don't have a lot of time, you know. There could be more attacks coming. There could be something else. Let's go, let's move out. A woman comes up to me. Her name, to me, was Mrs. Potter. She goes, oh, I'm Danny Potter's wife. Her name was Jeannie. Is Danny working? Danny was a firefighter assigned to Ladder Company 10. Now she's having a conversation with me while this is going on. I'm like, Mrs. Potter, Danny's fine. He wasn't working. He's not here. Please, you have to go. You have to go. She walks down the hallway, and I see her go down the subway. Another woman, African-American woman, big woman, comes down. Oh, Lord, thank you, sir. Thank you. You guys are the best. She walks through the revolving door. The lights go out, and she's immediately crushed by part of the building. The building had collapsed. Now I get down on the floor, and I'm screaming to God, please, God, let me live, please, please, please. And the wind comes down through those doors and picks me up like a rag doll, and I'm flying through the air like this. In pitch darkness, I can't feel walls, I'm floating in the air. I finally crash down on the ground, I push myself up against a wall, and I'm just praying to God that I don't get hit with a beam, that I don't get crushed and I don't get killed. God, please, I'll do whatever you want, please, let me live, I want to go home, please. Bravery is gone at this point. Now I'm pleading for my life. 11 seconds go by and I'm alive. I'm in pitch black darkness. Everything is filled with dust. I can't breathe. The air is so thick. The dust is so huge. It's getting stuck in my nose and in my eyes. I remember for a brief moment, that I have my fireman's gear on. I have my bunker gear and I have my Scott pack on my back. I have air. I turned on my air, I put the mask on my face, poof. I put a big mask full of dust right in my own face. Now I'm choking on it because now I just shoved it in my mouth. I spit it out, I shake out the mask, I put the mask on, I get 2 full hits of air, and I'm feeling a lot better now. Now I can start to think clearer. All right, I need to get out of here. I got to get out of this building. I am trapped in darkness. There are bodies all over the place. I hear people screaming and crying, don't leave us, don't leave us. I can't see or find anybody. I start making my way toward West Street where the security stations were, where they had the revolving gates, and I could see the building is completely down on top of the rotating gates, and there are bodies in that pile. I said, all right, I can't go that way. I go around the security booth, there's the elevator bank. I want to go through the elevator bank to Vesey Street and get out that way. The elevators came crashing down, and there are people thrown out of the elevators that are just pieces. I can only see this because my flashlight is only able to reflect off of what's directly in front of me. I can't see the big picture, but as I go up to the pile, I see an arm. I'm like, oh my God, there's people over here. I go around the elevator bank, and I see a big 10-foot by 10-foot light gray patch, kind of like that window right there. And I said to myself, that's a window. That's a way out. I went over there. Sure enough, it's a window. There was an escalator right above it, and the escalator held up the building. Whatever fell, the escalator was able to hold the building. And I went out that window. And before I left, I took off my flashlight and I shined it back into the darkness. And I said, if anybody could see this light, this is a way out. With that, 5 people came up out of the basement. It was a lieutenant from Engine Company 5 and 4 civilians. When he came out onto the street, he grabbed me right away. He goes, who are you with? Who are you with? Ladder 10, Danny Peritorio. I'm like, Lou, we got to get out of here. The building's coming down. Oh, what? He was in the basement. He had no idea the building had just come down. Him, myself, and 2 people had run to the left. The other 2 people had run to the right. When we got to the middle of the street, the second building started to collapse. It was the first building hit, but the second to collapse. And the top part of the building kind of went like this, and I thought it was going to fall like a tree, and I was going to have to outrun it. So now we're all hightailing it out of there. We're running as fast as we could. The people that ran to the right got crushed and were killed. When the building came down, it pushed them up against another building, and they were killed instantly. Myself, the lieutenant, and the other 2 people, if you look in that book, you'll see the news story. You can look through those books in front of you. We survived. They found me a year later, but we found out the story. With that now, I take off going up West Street, heading north, getting away from the Trade Center. The building comes down, and there's this big cloud of dust that, in my mind, is filled with fire. There's a fireball in that dust, and it's coming at me. And I'm not going to be able to outrun it. This thing is moving very fast. So I opened up a gate to a chain link area. It was a field. They were going to build a new building. And I just laid down in the grass, and I put my jacket up over my head, and I felt the debris and the wind come over me. I was getting hit with all the little debris that was in there. And I said to myself at that moment, I said, this is the end of the world. I said, this is the movies, the Armageddon, the bombs, missiles are coming. This is it. This is how it starts. This is the end of the world. We're going to retaliate. Someone else is going to hit us, and this is it. I had lost a sense of humanity. I had given up on him. Within a few seconds, the dust cloud got lighter, and I could see figures running through it. I could see firefighters. I'm like, oh my God, thank God I'm not the last person alive in the world. Like I have people now that, we could put this back together again. So I continue working my way up north on the West Street, and I come to my guys. They're sitting on a park bench by the river. One of the guys is on the railing looking to jump in the water. He's leaning back and he's going to jump. I'm like, don't jump, don't jump. It's over, it's over. There's nothing else is coming. Everything's locked down. The bridge is locked down, the tunnel. Nobody else is coming in. He's trying to jump on ferries are coming in from Jersey and from the water. They're crashing into the bulkhead, and people are jumping into the water. They're jumping onto the ferries. They're breaking their legs. They're breaking their ribs, doing anything to get away from the scene. So I tell him, don't jump. He comes back over. Now we're gathering information. All right, did you see Greg Atlas? Yeah, he's okay. He went to a hospital. Okay, good. Did you see this one? Did you see that? We're going over the names. Who saw who? I didn't see him. We got separated. He went this way. I went that way. So I'm trying to gather some information. At some point, I pick up my phone. At the time, it's a flip phone. I had the Nextel with the little chirp. And I'm trying to chirp. It's not going through. I called my girlfriend at the time, who worked in Manhattan. The phone call doesn't go through. I called my mom. Sorry, the number is disconnected. It's not going through. My aunt has her phone since 1939. As a matter of fact, it's still a rotary phone. It's an analog line, not a digital. The phone call goes through. She picks up the phone. Oh my God, I can't believe you're alive. We're watching this on TV. There's all these people are dead. There's a plane that hit in Pentagon. I'm now getting this information for the first time. I don't know that this is happening. I'm not privy to this. With that, my mom, who lives downstairs from my aunt, gets on the phone, and she's hysterical. Calm down, what's going on? I'm glad you're alive, but your brother's down there. Your brother was dispatched about an hour ago. Now, my brother was a firefighter. He came on the job about 3 years after myself, and he worked in Brooklyn. I'm in Manhattan. He knows that I'm there. I know that he's coming. So I tell my guys, I go, listen, I got to go back in the building. No, you're crazy. You're crazy. I got to go back. I got to find my brother Michael. I can't leave Michael, even if he's dead. I can't leave him here. You're going to get killed. You can't go back in there. The building, they're grabbing me. I jump on a bicycle that I find in the debris, and I start riding my bike back to the Trade Center. People on the side, he's crazy. Look at him. He's going back into the Trade Center. Dust coming off of me in my bunk again. I'm going back to the building. I got to find him. I couldn't go home that day. Find them dead or alive, I had to find them. I get as far as I could with the bike. I throw it down in the debris, and now I'm walking, and I'm seeing guys coming out. They're all completely covered in dust. They're gray. They're bleeding. Who's helping who? Civilians, firemen, police officers. And I'm asking everybody I could see, did you see engine 228? Engine 228 was my brother's company. Did you see engine 228? Did you see engine 228? No, we didn't see him. We didn't see him. I'm like, maybe they didn't get here. Maybe it's okay, or they're completely destroyed. They're gone. I'm calling on my radio that I still have on me. Ladder Company 10 to engine 228. Ladder Company 10. Any member, engine 228, please respond. No response. As I go back to the Trade Center, I see an ambulance on fire. There's an ambulance. It's crushed. It's on fire. I said, maybe there's somebody still in there. Maybe they put somebody on a stretcher. Let me look in there. I looked in the ambulance. There's nobody there. I find a hose on the floor that someone abandoned. I pick it up. I get a little bit of water. I put out the fire. I look in. There's nobody there. Okay, that's good. I see my captain, who was off duty at the time, but had worked the night before, was still in Manhattan. And he sees me. Now he's trying to make light of it. Hey, how you doing? What's going on? You okay? Good. You're good. Everybody's good. I go, Cap, my brother. I got to find my brother. He's like, well, what's going on? I go, my brother's down here somewhere. He goes, hey, come with me. He's making it very lighthearted. He sees I'm in some shock. He goes, there's a command center down here by the water. He got a list of all the guys that are missing right now. He goes, come on, we'll find your brother. So we go down to the command center, and there's a bunch of guys there, and we're looking on the list, and my brother's name is on the list. Michael Morabito, there he is. He's missing. We don't know where he is, but he's missing. Now I'm a little bit more, this is getting more real now. I'm getting a little bit more devastated. Captain and I turn around. There's another captain standing. He's got on his captain's helmet, and he's holding 5 pairs of black shoes that the guys took off in the rig to put on their bunker gear. I got to get the guys their shoes. How are they going to go home tonight? They need their shoes back. They got to get their shoes. His entire company was gone. The only thing that he had left of those guys were those shoes, and he was holding on to these things for dear life because he knew his family, their families wanted this. But he was completely in denial that they were gone. This is how the mental effect of what was going on at the same time that you're doing your job was happening. I worked my way back to the firehouse. We had to go all the way around the debris. The Trade Center was right in front of my firehouse. I couldn't just walk right through 110 stories of debris that was laying on the floor in front of us. So we go all the way around. I come through the back of the firehouse, and the guys are in shock that I'm alive. Oh my God, dead man walking, dead man walking. They're yelling out, make way, dead man walking. I come in, I'm trying to give them as much information as I have. Who I saw, where they were, who's alive, who I know is okay, who went to a hospital. They're giving me information. The plane hit the Trade Center, the plane hit the Pentagon. They were stopping another one. It was on its way to the Capitol, it crashed in Pennsylvania. Now I'm starting to see the big picture. while we're sitting there talking, we're in our kitchen, and all the windows had blown out from the wind that picked me up. It went right through the entire firehouse because we left our doors open for people to escape. Went through the firehouse, blew out all the windows in the back of the firehouse, crushed our metal doors, broke wire reinforced glass, threw it outside. That's how strong that blast was. About a quarter of a nuclear explosion. We're sitting in the kitchen talking, and all of a sudden we see all these people running down the street. Get out, get out! The building's coming down. Here we go again. Now we jump out the window, we start running. After a couple of minutes, they give a clear sound, we go back. Guys go back up on the pile, they're digging again. Beep, beep, everybody off, it's coming down, let's go, everybody. Because now there's still pieces of the building that are still standing, on fire. The whole neighborhood's on fire. 90 West Street is on fire. 7 World Trade Center is on fire. 6 World Trade Center is on fire. 3 World Trade Center has 90% of the building missing. There's all these buildings. It wasn't like a nice big clear field. Everything is in a pile. There's still buildings standing, and they're on fire. 90 West Street was a 50-story building. The entire building was on fire, from the basement to the roof. The whole building was burning. How are you going to put that out? We're running. After the third or fourth time, we're like, that's it. We're done running. If we're going to die, we're all going to die together. I'm not running anymore. With that, I said to myself, if we're going to just sit in this kitchen, let me go back and see if I can find my brother. At this point, I've given up hope that he's alive. I'm saying to myself, he would have reached out to me, because he knows where I am. He would have tried to get to me. I go outside, I'm digging on the pile. We're doing the bucket brigade. Home Depot sends thousands of buckets. And now we're doing the bucket brigade. We're taking little pieces of debris and we're dumping it in a pile over here. Everybody, quiet, quiet. I think I hear somebody's voice. All right, keep digging, nothing. Now, hold it, I hear a cell phone, a phone's ringing. These are all people that are in this debris whose loved ones are trying to reach them. And they're hearing voice messages and they're hearing their phones ringing while they laid underneath that trade center. This went on for a long time, that we were digging. Stop, everybody quiet, get the dog over here. Now we're dealing with this insanity. It's hot, I'm tired. We just went through this terrible traumatic experience. And I see on the corner of West Street and Liberty, there's a hydrant that has a little bit of water trickling out of it. The trade center came down and ruptured all the water lines in the street. So there was no pressure in the lines that we normally get from our hydrants. The only way we're getting water to put out the fire is we're getting hose lines from the fireboats that are in the river. There's spaghetti all over the streets of fire hoses coming from the boats to put out whatever fire we can put out, trying to put out 50-story buildings that are on fire. It's a tremendous task. And I go over to the hydrant, and I get down on the floor, and I take a little bit of water, and I wash my face, and I take a drink, and I go like this, and my brother walks right in front of me. Are you kidding me? Where have you been? I'm looking for you. And I grab him, and we hug each other. I thought you were dead. I thought you were dead. We had come through the tunnel, and there was a giant cloud of smoke that came at us. And I turned to my guy in the next seat next to me. I said, my brother's gone. My brother's gone, but I have to do my job as a fireman. I have to do my job. I have to go in there, and I have to help as many people as I can. So I told my brother, I said, that's it. We stay together the rest of the day. I said, I'm not going home without you. I got you now. I'm not going to lose you. My brother winds up making one of the only rescues after the collapse of the Trade Center. A gentleman by the name of Pasquale, who they call the World Trade Center surfer. He was on the 30th floor with all his co-workers from his office building in a closed stairwell when the building collapsed and he goes unconscious. He wakes up several minutes later and he's holding on to a metal banister sitting on an 18-inch by 18-inch square of concrete, and he feels the sunlight on his face. And he says, what's going on? He goes, I was in the stairwell. How do I feel sunlight? He had gotten knocked unconscious, and he rode from the 30th floor to the 7th floor on the debris on the outside of it, unconscious. When he woke up, he was on this location that they couldn't get to him. They couldn't climb to him, so they had to go above him, lower a rope to him where he tied it around his waist, and then they lowered him down to the other fireman. My brother was involved with that rescue. At that time, I was down on the lower levels digging. Day turns into night. We're digging all day, we're doing what we have to do, we're finding pieces of body all over the place. Nobody's coming out intact, nobody is whole. I decided I had enough. It's time for me to go home. I did my job. I've been here all day. I go to get in my car is crushed. My car was parked in front of the firehouse by the trade center. My car is flat. I reached into the window, I grabbed my softball glove. The reality is, we're gonna play softball again one day. I grabbed my glove, I grabbed my little bag, and I start heading to Brooklyn. At that time, I lived in Long Island, but I had family in Brooklyn. My parents, the block that I grew up on, friends. I figured if I get into Brooklyn, someone will come and pick me up. You know, it's not too bad, they'll come and get me. I start walking over the Brooklyn Bridge, it's nighttime. Giuliani had shut down the bridges and tunnels, everything was quiet. Halfway over the bridge, there's a little African-American construction worker. He's wearing a green hard hat, and he's leaning on the railing and he's looking at the trade center. There's a few people milling about. And he sees me coming, I'm wearing my bunker gear, and he starts talking to me. Hey, you were down there? Yeah. What do you think? I said, it's probably 10,000 people dead, as far as I could tell. There's bodies everywhere. Yeah. I was on a building in Brooklyn. I saw the whole thing. I saw the planes. He goes, let me tell you something. He goes, you know, God has a bigger plan for everything that goes on. You know that, right? Now I'm like, I don't even want to hear it. I'm like, oh yeah, whatever. I'm just listening and nodding. You can't understand it because you don't understand how God needs to work. But God has a bigger plan for you, a bigger plan for everything. I said, yeah, you're right. You're probably right. That's true. And now we're walking and talking, and I'm basically just yesing him to death. I want to get over this bridge. I want to go home. I'm tired. I want to see people that I love. I'm shot. I'm in some type of shock, I'm sure. So as we're coming over the other end of the bridge, I could see 2 patrol cars, 2 police cars, and they're nose to nose, and they're blocking the entrance to the bridge so nobody can come up the bridge. At the very end, maybe 100 yards from the police officers, there's a bicycle path that comes down off the Brooklyn Bridge because you're allowed to ride your bicycle on the Brooklyn Bridge. And when you come down, they don't want you to go into traffic, you take the bicycle path. With that, this construction worker says goodbye to me, I wish you luck, and he cuts down the bicycle path. Now I continue walking up to the police officers and I tell the guys, I'm like, listen, you know, I'm a fireman, yeah, no problem. I need a ride home. Yeah, we'll get somebody here for you, don't worry. You want a bottle of water? I said, oh, yeah, that would be great. I go, you know what? Give me another bottle of water. So I'm gonna run up, catch my friend, I'm gonna give it to him. They go, who? I go, the guy I was walking with on the bridge. They go, what guy? I said, the guy that just went down. They go, you were alone. I go, what are you talking about? They said, we saw you in the middle of the bridge. You were on the railing. We thought you were gonna jump and commit suicide. We said, this poor guy has seen so much, he's gonna commit suicide. They said, you were by yourself. I kept my mouth shut. I didn't want to continue because I don't want to be in handcuffs saying, this guy's crazy. I'm gonna take him to Bellevue. I believe that I walked with a prophet, someone that was guiding me, a direct hand from God that was guiding me. That guy has never come forward. I've told this story. And whoever that person was knows where he was at that time. He has never come forward to say, I was that guy that walked with you. I believe at that time that everything that was going on, that he walked with me and he gave me a purpose. He gave me meaning. Many years later, I had a son that was born. And he was born with a traumatic brain injury. My firstborn son, Rocco. It was a very, very difficult road for myself and my wife. We were told he's never going to eat. He's going to be blind. He's not going to be able to hear. He's never going to be a functioning person. Please let him die for your own sake. And I said, no. You don't understand. I was in a trade center. I survived for a reason. This is my reason. My son. And my wife and I, we raised that boy. And he was strong, and he was getting better, and he was learning, and he was doing all the things that they said he couldn't do. But then he did pass away. He was 7 years old. We were all at home on a Sunday morning. They ruptured an artery in his throat, and he choked to death on his own blood. But I thank God for giving me 7 years with the most beautiful, loved, innocent person I had ever met in my life. My son was incapable of sin. He's the only person I know who could not sin. He was incapable of it. And when he died, our priest said, you no longer pray for your son. You now pray to him. He's a saint. and he sits with God, and he keeps the gates open for you from when you go. And I truly believe that my experience, that my son is actually still there, and that I will see him again one day. Whatever your faith is, whatever it is that you believe, whatever gets you through your day, I'm not going to preach to you and say yours is wrong and mine is right. If it keeps you on the path of the straight and narrow, and it keeps you doing good and helping one another, then stay on that path. You have no idea what's going to come to you in your life. You don't know what kind of challenges you're going to be faced against. You don't know where you're going to go. You don't know where you're going to work. But whatever it is, embrace it, hold on to it, try to teach others. This is now history. You guys are living it. You're experiencing it. I would have loved, when I was a young boy, to sit in the classroom and hear a story about World War II, or to find out how JFK had gotten killed. I was too little. They didn't do those things. Your teacher's putting this together. He's doing this on his own. He reached out to me. I got a letter in the mail. Said, this is what we're doing. You think you might want to take a ride up here and hang out with us? Throwing a shot in the dark. And I was like, you know what? This is kind of important. I have a life. I have children. I'm moving on with things. Right now, I'm supposed to be doing my work that I was supposed to be doing today. And I said, this is important. I'm going to come up here. I'm going to talk to you guys. I could see by the look on your face, you guys think it's important too. You know, you understand. You weren't alive when the Trade Center happened, but you understand the importance of it. With that, I'll keep quiet. If anybody has any questions, I have some photographs, personal stuff, other books. Feel free to look at it. All I ask is that at the end, just put it on the table so I can gather it up. I've been saving that stuff for 20 years. I'd like to take it back for my children to be able to see one day. Anybody questions? Nothing is off the table.
From the last, like, thing that you shared with us, like the last session that you did with us, last hour, what did you mean by, like, when the fireball, like, went down the elevator and it, like, exploded out at those people in the lobby?
When the airplane went into the building, the airplane had just been filled up with fuel for a long flight. When that plane went into the building, the jet fuel, which is mostly alcohol, came down the elevator shaft. It splashed out on the floor, obviously, that it crashed into, but the rest of it pooled and went down into the elevator shaft. When that fuel was coming down, it was already on fire from the fireball. So when that fuel hit the mezzanine level where the elevator stopped, it splashed out. Now, it kind of vaporized, because alcohol is lighter than water, and it vaporized and it shot out across the entire floor, and anybody that was in that area was greeted with a fireball. And the only reason why I know this is a friend of mine that worked in the financial center right across the street said, I saw you coming around with your fire truck, and I wanted to tell you 2 minutes before you were there, a fireball just blew out that window. Obviously, he never got to me, he couldn't, and when we got there was no fire. After the Trade Center had collapsed, and there was this pile on what we called ground zero, and guys were digging over there and working on top of it, unbeknownst to us at the time, there was 22,000 gallons of ammonia that was used for the World Trade Center's cooling system. There was alcohol from the planes that crashed that didn't ignite. There was cleaning supplies. There was papers. There was plastics. This was all down 60 feet below the ground on fire, coming up through debris, body parts, steel, concrete dust, and we were standing on there with masks that you're wearing today and breathing that in. More firefighters have died today from effects of the Trade Center than died on the day of the Trade Center, than people who died on the day of the Trade Center. We're adding names to the list every day, and these are cancers and respiratory illness from people who were down there digging on that pile. But that's how that fireball occurred, from the alcohol from the planes. We good, people? I'll let my captain here speak to you guys.
We have different stories. I'd only heard about a 10 story for the first time. I came, that's a little description. Ladder 10, should have a chalkboard. The Trade Center is how many acres?
16 acres.
60 acres,
16
okay, you got a 60
Each
acre
floor
square.
was 200 by 200, an acre for each floor.
Say this is 60 acres. You got the south tower here, was it number 3 right in front of 10? Number 4 is over here. Number 6 is over here. And the north tower is here. Number 7 is across the street. And number 3, the hotel, is over here. Ladder 10 sits right here. And as I said, 7 World Trade is right there. We were on opposite sides of this thing. Your tour of duty started at 9 o'clock. I worked at the Office of Emergency Management on the 23rd floor of 7 World Trade. My tour started at 6 o'clock. And we have different duties. The Office of Emergency Management borrowed people from the police department, the fire department, people that were EMTs, and some others to work at large-scale emergencies, to help manage large-scale emergencies. Think of train wrecks and when you're not thinking of the Trade Center, you can't think of anything. Anyway, large-scale emergencies. So we were assigned each morning. We were given a baton order. There were about 6 of us working each day. And you would come in at 6 o'clock in the morning and okay, you're number 1 going out, you're number 2, you're number 3. I don't actually remember what number I was that morning. But my big concern, we each had a little desktop kind of thing. And we interacted with people that did emergency planning. So when we didn't have an emergency to respond to and get out and do our liaison job, we helped the planners plan the next emergency. But 7 World Trade, I would check in at 6 in the morning. At the 4th floor of 7 World Trade was the cafeteria. So I ran down to get my coffee, took the elevator down, met many of my co-workers who were doing the same thing. We're chatting it up for a while. I didn't do that. I must have done something else in those 2 hours between 6 o'clock and 8:46. But at 8:46, I'm at the elevator at 4th floor, and I'm going to get up to, the lobby floor, and I'm going to get up to the 23rd floor. When suddenly you heard this incredible thud. All right? From the other side, it sounded just like another noise, but we were directly across from the north face of the North Tower, and we took the entire audio, if you will, right upon us. Everybody turns. We had all the windows in front of us. Everybody turns at the windows, and the first thing you saw was what looked like a waterfall. It was all the glass and metal coming down from the 77th or 80th floor, whatever it was, and people just stood there, amazed. You know, big noise, turn around and see something nobody's ever seen before. And then after that little bit of a shock wave, I'm standing next to one of my coworkers. We always carried a radio with us anyway, because we could go out for the next emergency, and I just went up to him. I put my coffee down, and I said, I think we have a job. We're going off, okay? I never went back up to my, where I worked, the office I worked in. Went across got outside the building and looked up, and from that angle could actually see the fire. From my perspective, I could see fire on 3 or 4 stories of the building facing north and facing east. I've been to 1 or 2 high-rise fires, but I've never seen anything like this. This is a huge amount of fire in one place. In 1993, we had a bombing in the very same building. So our immediate thought, if we were actually thinking, was, okay, we got another bomb. I grab my radio. I've got to go across the street to the concourse, which is some of the area you were talking about, right?
Mm-hmm.
down where Starbucks it was. And what I had to do, if you were there earlier for the assembly class, I was lauding the police officers who, this can't be more than 3 minutes after the impact, were telling everybody to get out of the trade center. These are people that had come in from New Jersey in the commuter rails. This is subway system. Nobody saw what's going on upstairs and sent them away. I'm convinced they saved something like 15 or 20,000 people. Past there, I got into the lobby of the North Tower. Now, I came in from a completely opposite side of the building. We heard coming in from West Street, you saw the burnt people in the lobby. What I saw, I had a longer distance, walked through, met Joe Pfeiffer, who was mentioned earlier, and told me the story that I just heard only for the second time in my life of the stepping over burnt, melted bodies. And I can confirm there was no fire there. So what's my job? My job as a incident management liaison officer, that's what they call this, was to make sure that the chief in charge of this fire has all the help he can get. And if there are people coming from another agency, like not the fire agency, the fire chief is going to be in charge of this thing. Joe Pfeiffer is going to be in charge of this thing until the next ranking officer comes. But we also have police, we have the building security, Corcoran and friends, were going to help us out because they understand the building, and I have to try to let the chief know what other assets he might have, what we might need, and what we can do with them. The chief asset we needed was to find out where exactly the fire was. You can see from the outside, but actually get a number system going. Find out where the elevators were that could take the firefighters, probably by at that first stage they called the third alarm, so you're talking about 100 or more firefighters with their equipment to get onto elevators to get up and put the damn fire out. That's the first order of business. So I'm working with the building people who are in touch with people that are in the elevators. And what we're trying to do is find out what elevator works and get the elevators down to the first floor so we can send firefighters up. As we're going through that system, one after the other are reporting, this elevator is stuck, this elevator is stopped, this elevator is not working. There's something like 90 elevators in these buildings. This is impossible to think about as a firefighter. But also we're getting information of people stuck in these elevators. Somebody's on the 35th floor, they're in an elevator with 10 or 12 people. Somebody else is on the 12th floor with 6 people, somebody's on the 50th floor. And we're keeping track of all of this because we're going to have to assign certain of these fire units to get to the identifiable elevators. Each elevator has a number. Identifiable elevator that's on an identifiable floor. We have a specific place to go to. Meanwhile, still looking for an elevator to actually get somebody up to the fire floor. I don't know how long it actually took before coming to the conclusion, the group of us coming to the conclusion, that there will be no elevator leaving the lobby floor that's going to get anybody up to the fire floor because all the elevators are out. The impact and the shock wave of the impact took out the water system above, took out probably all the electric above the fire. The shock wave ran down the building, bounced off the solid rock that holds up the trade center, and reverberated up. All right, that shock wave knocked out all the elevators and probably a lot of other things. It also knocked out all the windows. The lobby. How many here have been in downtown Providence and been in an office building? A couple. All right. Been in the lobby floor. It's a big open floor. All right, and a trade center. First of all, the whole floor is 1 acre. The lobby is a 4-story operation. It's a huge space, and all the walls, they're on the walls, it's all windows directly out to the streets. Well, that reverberating shock wave broke all of those windows. So while we're trying to get things organized, you could hear other fire trucks coming in, police coming in. You could hear all the sirens outside. And then you hear another plane. all right? You could hear the sound of an approaching plane. Oh, I'm sorry. Earlier on, I said I didn't know what it was. As soon as I came in and saw Joe Pfeiffer, he actually saw the plane go into that first building. But now, this is 8:46, 9:50. 20 minutes, 20-something minutes later, we hear the second plane coming. And it's not just another plane. You could hear it coming towards us, all right? People are, and we got scores, almost 100 firefighters in this lobby with nothing to do except walk up the stairs to put out a fire 80 floors above. And everybody's listening to the sound of this approaching plane. Let's get closer and closer and closer. And finally, an impact. All right, and there is no shock wave for us. The shock wave is that other building now who got smacked. Oh, at the gathering of all these people, it's not just firefighters and New York's a big place. Fire department has 9,000 people in it. And you rarely see the most high ranking. They stay in headquarters and they listen to radios and they do important things. Donald Burns, I believe, was the oldest, longest acting fire chief on the fire department. He'd been on job about 44 years or something like that. Donald Burns shows up in the lobby of the fire building. I said, oh, this is important. You don't usually see somebody that high ranking there. But he had been around a long time. When that second plane hit the building, Donald Burns didn't even flinch. Others sort of cringed. You did a little of this, and then you did, okay, what exactly happened? He just got on his radio, called the dispatcher and said, we have another impact, send another 3-4 alarms worth of firefighters to the second building, and then said, that's where he's going, all right? Never flinched. He goes around, you know the end of the story, we never see him again. Back where we are, now somebody's trying to come to the decision, are we gonna keep sending people up? By now, the troops that are marching up are on the 40th or 50th floor. Some people have actually got the elevators that were stuck and tried to release them. Of course, now they have to walk down the stairs. In the middle of all of that, one of the consoles that's telling us where the elevators are that are stuck, surprisingly tells us they're on the first floor. We're on the first floor. All right, it's hard to imagine. These are big buildings. On the lobby floor, there were over 20 or 30 elevators. And you had to find the right one to pry open these doors. These people have been stuck in this elevator for 20, 25 minutes, not knowing how close they were to escape. And we got them out. So what happens next? Time is going by, things are not getting done, but it's a little chaos in one sense, not getting done what normally gets done. Normally if there's a fire in a high-rise building, you press the button, you go up, you get to the floor below the fire, you hook up your hoses
Please excuse this interruption. All wrestlers, please report to Mr. Joyce's room, 303, after school today. Thank you. Bye.
I lost my thought.
Sorry about that.
Where was I? Oh, we got the people out on the first floor. Now, now we got 2 buildings burning. The command system, there's always one person in charge of a major emergency. And if you got 2 buildings burning, it's not a good idea to keep the commander there in one building. So they're going to set up this command post out there on West Street. But I'm going to stay in the lobby and work with the elevator, with the fire chief in charge of this building. Needless to say, we've come very close. And now people are trying to make decisions. Okay, are we going to give up on this? Let's get everybody out of here. This is looking like it's going to get worse. But before that decision's made, we start hearing a noise. We start hearing what sounds like a railroad train coming directly at you. And it gets louder and louder and louder. We're talking 100 to 150 decibels. and it's getting louder, and it's coming towards me. In these circumstances, your brain doesn't work like your brain's working right now. You can think about things, okay, what am I gonna do after I get out of here, and what am I gonna, when something like this has happened, your nervous system just says, oh, if there's a big noise coming from there, you are gonna go that way, all right? There's not a lot of checking things out. It's all, let's get out of here, and that's what we did. And it just so happens, like I said, this lobby floor is an acre square. And we just happened to be standing in an area that had a passageway. Unbeknownst to us, it was just a passageway that was there, and the noise is over there. Ran through the passageway. It actually took us to the next building, number 6. I was told later that it took 11 seconds for the South Tower to fall completely. That noise just increased, and then stopped. You had 150 decibels that went to 0 in an instant. And it was about a dozen of us that ran into this dead end, actually, almost a dead end. Had to stop. And the dust came in. All right, black dust is coming in and filling up this whole space that we're in. You can't see your hand in front of you. And, well, some of that noise obviously was the rubble that came down from the South Tower. And a lot of it came into the very lobby area that we had been in. We can't see anything. My friend Chief Hayden, he decided to try to get back into the lobby and see what that was like, and maybe we can get back out the way we came in. We still can't see our hands in front of our faces. We're choking on this stuff. And he comes back in and says, we can't get out of here. That's not good. Then everybody's asking, are you okay? Are you okay? You okay? And everybody says they're okay. Until one guy trips over somebody who was definitely not okay, and it says, man down, man down. We got somebody down. We go over there, somebody throws on a flashlight, and we recognize it was our chaplain. Our chaplain had showed up earlier to be what chaplains do, comfort people, I suppose, and he ran down the passageway with us. Well, apparently he had some kind of heart attack. He went down. The firefighter that discovered him, the standing operating procedure would be to start CPR. All right, somebody's down. And he calls out in question, start CPR. Then the chief says, no, we have to get out of here. We're not in a good place. So we picked up the chaplain and brought him outside, went around the building, found ourselves on the northeast corner of the site. And you couldn't really tell, we still didn't know what exactly happened. That was a lot of noise, but we didn't know exactly what happened. As we turned around, we should have been able to see the South Tower, but this whole concourse area is covered in dust. My thought was half the building had come down, from the top floor down to the fire floor. That could have made all that noise, could have made out all that dust. We brought the chaplain's body out of the area, or about a half a block away. Left them with the EMTs. They had an ambulance there. And shortly after that, we heard the next rumbling. It sounded very much like the first rumbling. And then you probably saw some of this film of people running in the streets of New York away from the dust. Well, I became one of those. We got about 3 or 4 blocks north, and the cloud was moving faster than we were. I ended up with a bunch of people, not firefighters. And I said, we got to duck inside. We're going to be inside this thing soon. We actually broke into a shop just to get inside where there was air, let the black cloud go by, or at least the dense part of the cloud go by. Things started to settle down, but then the smoke started to seep into where we were. So this is not going to be a good place for much longer. Let's get out of here and try to get outside the cloud. We do so. You sort of lose track of where you are. I'm 3 or 4 blocks north of the Trade Center now. And as the dust seems to settle, I can actually look in front of me and I see City Hall. And all I could think of was the bad guys are hitting targets, notable pieces of infrastructure of New York City, and I didn't want to be near City Hall, so I made a U-turn, walked back into the dust and decided, okay, somewhere in there they're going to start up another command post. I need to be part of that system, and went to look for it. A light part of the story. This is heavy stuff, isn't it? My friend here saw more bodies than I did in my entire life. He saw that in 30 minutes. I, except for the chaplain, managed not to see one. Anyway, I'm walking back. The streets are still covered in dust. I can't see. My eyes are getting clogged up with all the dust. I'm literally feeling down the walls. I'm about 2 blocks north of the Trade Center site. And I look into there's a glass frontage window, and I see a green neon shamrock in the window. And across the shamrock, written in red, is Budweiser. I know I have a pub. There might be, I'm gonna go to the pub today. Open the door. Now, you're gonna have to see the films, all the films. This is the end of the world out here. This is disaster. This is black. This is glass. This is blood and bodies. And I opened the door, and I felt I walked into Cheers. I don't know if you know Cheers on TV. You're in a happy place. Everybody's telling jokes to one another. And I can't believe it. I really can't believe it. It was just shocking. But they weren't laughing. They were all staring at TVs. They were all watching what was going on just outside. I got myself cleaned up, found what became, well, actually, I found a space and helped. Decided, I met Pete Hayden again, the chief, and he's a little guy, and he's trying to give orders. Okay, we're trying to go be as helpful as we can. The firefighters are in there are wearing what we call self-containing breathing apparatus. If you run low on your air, a bell goes off, signaling if you're in a bad spot to get out of there because you're going to run out of air. You heard a lot of these bells going off by guys that were buried in there. You also heard open mic radios. So people are searching for these noises, and maybe they're going to find some people. Pete Hayden's a couple inches shorter than I am. He's in charge of this thing. We found most of the fire apparatus in the immediate area were destroyed, but not so destroyed. You see rubble, but what became, one of the fire engines was standing there surrounded by rubble. I told Pete, if you want to be in charge of this thing, you got to be able to be seen. So we got Pete up on the top, let everybody know he was in charge, and started giving me direction from there. He spent about the next 7 hours on top of that truck. As was noted before, when the buildings came down, it crushed the infrastructure. There's no fire hydrants. Can't put fires out without fire hydrants. Also, steam lines are crushed. Most of the power is out in the area. And we've got fires not only in the rubble, we got fires in 6 or 8 of the buildings around the Trade Center site. I have my radios on. I get a call from a fireboat. The fire department in New York has, I think, 6 fireboats. And they each have names, and this one had a name, and its name was Harvey. It's the Fireboat Harvey. Calls up and says they're on their way to the Trade Center site. The Trade Center site's 1 city block from the Hudson River. I said, great, good, we're going to need a fireboat. Come on in. His next transmission is, can you get a fuel barge to me because I need fuel. Now, my firefighter left. Those of us who got promoted in rank in the fire department had to study to take a test that's only given once every 4 years. And if you want to take that test, you're gonna take it to pass. So you're going to learn every operation that's in, any standard operation whatsoever. So even if you're working in an area in New York that's got nothing to do with high-rise buildings, you're going to understand where everybody is supposed to be when you fight fires in a high-rise building. Similarly, if you're on a fireboat, there's a whole bunch of standing operations for a fireboat. When my little study group was getting together to study for our exam, I was assigned to do Q&As on our little cards for the Marine Operations Manual. None of us had ever been on a fireboat, but we had to know all about it if we ever wanted to pass our tests. On the very first page of the Marine Manual, it tells you that every fireboat at the beginning of every tour will have enough fuel to pump water for 3 days. I was never going to forget that. I took 3 promotional exams to get where I am, and I knew that material. And now I got a fireboat coming to the scene and asking for fuel. And I just stood there. Somebody took a photograph of me. I'm just standing there, I'm staring at my radio. This whole disaster is all around me. I'm staring at my radio. This is an impossibility. I didn't find out till about a week or two later. The Fireboat Harvey, was a retired fireboat. It is now a museum piece that's parked on the west side of Manhattan, on the Hudson River, about 20 blocks north of the Trade Center. The museum operators are retired firefighters who love their fireboat, and have been keeping it active and taking people on that want to see it, and they could actually pump water and show people how these things worked. The guys that were doing that morning, again, they're all retirees. They're like where I am right now, okay? They hadn't put out fires in years. But everything on the boat operated. They always had minimum enough fuel, only enough fuel to get whatever you wanted to go for the next little show and tell. And they come to the scene. This is only a hint of what kind of chaos you have at a gigantic scene like this. We got a fuel barge. They got water to the scene. In fact, they were the first ones that got water into hoses that actually put out fires at the Trade Center.
Captain Culley,
Yeah.
sorry to cut you off.
No worries.
Well, they're in the second, so everybody's about to get crazy and leave.
Okay.
Does anybody have any questions? Well, we have like 30 seconds.
I should have done this earlier. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
No, we didn't warn you. I apologize.
Any Q&A, I'll be happy to take. Doesn't matter. Yes?
Yeah, they know the bell's gonna ring. So what I would like to say is thank you on behalf of the students here, because again, none of the students, and I was just talking to the other firemen here, none of these students were alive at that time, and I had to think about that and process that yesterday myself.
Yeah.
Having been in the same room where watching it happen, thinking that none of these kids were alive back then.
Well, keep learning. This is a piece of history. You're learning history from all different eras today. The one learning thing I'd like to end with is the fact history is made by real living people. You saw some of them today. All right, when you read your old history books, Columbus or Renaissance or anything like that, those are actually human beings. If you really get into your history, try to pick up an autobiography. Somebody who's really there talking to you. So thank you.
Thank you very much.